What is up, everyone, and welcome to Metalcore Nerds. I am your host, Sean Mott, and today I have a very special guest, Richard Janvrin, singer of True Shot, the True Shot Guest Spot podcast, and music video reactor extraordinaire. What is up?
What's going on? I don't know about the extraordinaire part, but I'll take it.
Professional music video reactor.
Professional, yes, absolutely, yeah. Very professional. Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me. I'm stoked to be doing this. This is probably my second podcast I've ever been on, like for metalcore related stuff. So this is really cool. Thank you for having me.
No, dude, it's my pleasure. And anyone listening to this today on Monday when it drops, well, we're recording on Sunday, but it comes out on a Monday. The day after, I am on Richard's podcast. So it's a week of us two.
Yes.
Talking about stuff.
Yes.
Buckle in.
I definitely planned the release of our show around this one, just to kind of make it all grouped together. I thought that'd be a good idea. Yeah.
Cross promotion. I love it.
Cross promotion. I love it.
What else do you want?
Yeah, that's it. There's nothing better, man.
Yeah. We talk about this on your podcast as well, a little bit. We kind of brush on it, but I wanted to talk about our current wrestling viewing habits. So because our viewing habits are very different. So that's why I liked this episode. Is going to be very interesting. I have no idea what he thought about this pay-per-view or the Dynamite after at all. So we're going into this blind, and I'm excited to see where this conversation goes. So break down what you watch wrestling wise, or like you can do a short background on like what you watched as a kid too. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah. I guess I'll just kind of do like a quick abridged version of my wrestling history. So I started watching wrestling like most people when I was really young. I remember 4 or 5 years old, kind of watching, towards the tail end of the Monday Night Wars, kind of in that era. I remember being I remember my dad especially really was one of those guys who would flip back and forth between WWF and WCW based on what was happening, and WCW kind of spoiling the results for the taped WWF shows. So then from there I just continued to watch it because it just stuck with me. So I think I really watched it heavily up until they first started doing the brand split. I remember actually having VHS tapes because it would be on too late and I would have to, go to sleep to go to school the next day. So I would take my grandmother, bless her heart, would tape record the shows and I would watch them after school that day. So I think that is like kind of the area that I remember that's like my last memory is that when they started doing the draft and the brand split. And then I kind of fell out of it for a while. I think like a lot of people, you kind of fall out of it and come back in. And I came back in because I have a 10-year-old son now. And at the time he was, probably 5 or 6 years old. And he was starting to kind of get into it. He thought it was cool. I remember our very first show that we went to was a house show at the TD Garden. He was wearing a Cesaro shirt. He was really into he was really into Cesaro and Enzo when he was there. Mm-hmm. So I kind of got back into wrestling because of him. And I also came across a documentary on the WWE network kind of detailing the Monday Night Wars. And from there, I discovered who the writer during the Attitude Era was, and that's Vince Russo, who I know for a lot of wrestling fans is a very polarizing figure. But I was very interested in this guy because it was kind of like I associated him with what got me into wrestling. So I was like, I kind of want to learn a little bit more about this guy. So I started listening to his podcast when he was on a free podcast feed on Podcast One. Yeah. And then since then, it's just kind of snowballed. And I've listened to him pretty much almost every day for the past 4 years at this point. And I haven't actually watched any wrestling put on USA Network or Fox or now with AEW, TNT. I haven't put any of that on in almost, I think this July will be 3 years. So it's been a while since so it's been a while since I've really watched any wrestling, but I kind of keep up with what's going on through Vince's podcast and various different shows that he has with AEW reviews or which I don't watch them too often, but just I kind of stay in the wrestling bubble, so to speak, a little bit.
Right.
What's going on? It's interesting because wrestling's like one of those phenomenons where it's like, even if you don't watch it, there's still like some like baseline level of, oh, what's going on? Like if you were ever a wrestling fan. So it's interesting.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I guess that was a little bit more long-winded than I anticipated, but that's kind of like my wrestling.
It's pretty concise. That was fine.
Cool. Yeah. So that's kind of like my wrestling background and all that. So yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I've touched this on past podcasts, but if you're new to the podcast, I can kind of go. I watched it kind of the end of the Attitude Era. It was more of when the Hardys and Shawn Michaels and DX were kind of coming really into form, and Edge and Christian and all that stuff. That was like the tag team ladder matches were the things I remember the most when I was a kid. And then I just stopped watching it because I don't know, I was a teenager and I started skateboarding and playing guitar and stuff, and I just didn't watch it. And then I eventually came back because I stumbled upon the CM Punk documentary, and I'm straight edge. So I was like, whoa, straight edge wrestler, like promoting that he's straight edge to like the world. That's really cool. So that got me back into it. And then my friends kind of showed me like Ring of Honor, PWG, which led to New Japan. And then obviously the people that made New Japan big in America run AEW. So as soon as AEW was like forming, I was all on board with that from the jump. And I've watched like I may have missed like one Dynamite, but I watch Dynamite every week. Even if I don't watch it live, I'll watch it like the day after or something. But I pretty much only watch AEW. I used to love NXT. But I just kind of the story, like I watch anything I consume, it's pretty much for story, whether it's like a video game or a movie, TV show, whatever. I just love storytelling in any kind of form. So the storytelling stuff of NXT kind of, it's there, but it's not the same as it was, to me at least. I don't really judge. I mean, there's a ton of my friends who still watch WWE, even watch Raw or SmackDown. It's just not for me anymore. I just don't care about it. And for the AEW, I don't think AEW is perfect. I definitely think they have their faults, but I do think they are the best wrestling show on television when it comes to the package of wrestling and storytelling, to me. And again, that's just my opinion. That's just how I feel. So that's why I keep watching it, because I love the wrestlers, and they've made a ton of new stars that have brought me to new people. And that was the whole thing that was exciting when I started getting into like what they called the indies, which is kind of like a weird term now because a lot of them have kind of gotten absorbed by WWE or don't really exist anymore. And AEW is not really like, AEW changed the landscape of wrestling because they were the first company that's an actual competitor for WWE since WCW. WWE still does a lot better numbers, obviously, because I mean, they've been on TV for like 30 years or something like that. But AEW only being around for a year and a half, or it's almost 2 years, but they didn't start on TV until in October. So it's about like a year and a half of TV. I feel like they're doing like an insane job as far as that. And it's funny, obviously you talk about Monday Wars. It's been referred to as the Wednesday Night Wars because NXT and WWE, or NXT and AEW are on the same night, which NXT is obviously like another form of WWE. They used to call it developmental, but it's pretty much its own brand on its own at this point. And they've beaten AEW in the ratings like 3 times or something in the whole year and a half. Maybe more than that, but not a lot. Like under 10, they've beat them in the ratings. And AEW's been demolishing them left and right like all year. And to me, like the main events AEW's put out on TV have been insanity. Like they've all been crazy. And they're doing this thing it's kind of been a dream for wrestling fans for years, and is now they're borrowing people from Impact and borrowing people from New Japan. And now even on Impact had a pay-per-view on Saturday, and it was a New Japan team versus the Good Brothers, who show up in AEW all the time, obviously. They have like a rich history with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks because they were all in the Bullet Club together in New Japan. And then the Good Brothers ended up going WWE, and then they ended up leaving WWE last April, and they got picked up by Impact, mostly because they couldn't travel to New Japan. New Japan was even putting on shows at the time. Now they are, but they've been doing American shows and Japan shows, so it's been kind of, They've been doing this new thing where they're actually doing stuff in America because they have a lot of American wrestlers. But now they're all kind of crossing over, which is awesome because anyone can show up anywhere. And that's only going to add to the competition factor against WWE. You know, it's like WWE's by itself and they're on their island where they'll stay forever because they're kind of stubborn and don't like working with anyone. And then AEW is like bringing all of the other bigger wrestling companies. The only one's missing is Ring of Honor, which I'm sure will come together eventually because Ring of Honor and New Japan have a past of working together and everything like that. So I think they'll all end up working together eventually, but it's just super cool because you can just, anyone can show up anywhere. And that's just exciting for anyone that likes wrestling. You know what I mean? Right. And another thing, speaking of competition, this pay-per-view made almost $7 million, which is the highest grossing non-WWE pay-per-view since 1999, which is pretty insane. Wow. It's crazy. So that's really cool for them. I'm happy for them. Like, you know, I'm a big AEW fan, so anything like that is super cool for me to see. And I mean, even like as a wrestling fact, like that's pretty crazy. It's weird because you can't really quantify WB pay-per-view numbers anymore because of the network. Right. Everyone pays $10 a month and you get all the pay-per-views. And also they have like 20 million pay-per-views a year. So it doesn't even matter. AEW has 4. So it's a little different. They make them feel like actual pay-per-views. But now that they have the network, I feel like they're pressured to be like, oh, people are paying a monthly subscription. We need to give them content to make them feel like it's worth it. But now it's weird because it's moving to Peacock and everything like that. It's kind of a confusing thing, but they made a lot of money, so good for them.
Yeah.
And I think it'll bring more eyes to the product because anyone who has Peacock, I think it'll be like a win-win for both because I don't think a lot of people wanted to buy Peacock anyway because the biggest thing is like The Office, but you can buy the DVD box set for The Office for like $40. So it's like, if you want to watch The Office, you can spend $40 or pay $10 a month. You know, it's kind of a, you know.
Yeah, I don't know how she did. My girlfriend got a stream box from Xfinity for free, and Peacock comes with it. So I was like, "Oh, that's interesting."
Sick.
So they just want people. Maybe that's a promotion that Peacock has. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. Because now I can just watch Peacock whenever because I've been watching the show The Blacklist, and I finally finished. I finally finished all the Netflix episodes. I'm like, where's the cable?
The rest.
They're on Peacock, so now I've been kind of going to Peacock to watch that. So it's been awesome. So no, I definitely agree.
Oh, yeah.
I think that them moving, if I heard it correctly, I know that they're moving. Eventually, they're going to move like all of the network content onto Peacock. So
yeah,
which I hope that will also, put more onus on the WWE to have better events, and not just make them, because now that the thing that I noticed with WWE is like now that, they're on Fox now, and I know that their numbers on SmackDown have kind of stabilized, but they're going down. I mean, the numbers across the board are kind of going down. And so I'm hoping that the more, I guess, quote unquote, masters they have to answer to will make them, like, hey, like perform a little bit better because now you're outside of, doing it on the network where you can get away with having 9 trash pay-per-views a year. You can, so hopefully, like now that they're on Peacock will be like, hey, listen, we gave you, X amount of millions of dollars, put something on that's compelling for people to watch.
Yeah, that's what people thought when they made the huge TV deal because the Fox deal was like massive. It was like
a
couple $1 billion or something like that over years, but still, it was a huge TV deal. And people were like, and I know there's been reports or something concrete really, but they're not really happy with the numbers and everything. But at the end of the day, they're still doing pretty big numbers for cable TV. It's kind of hard for anything to do super well on cable TV, especially with streaming. And that's the other interesting thing with streaming services. Like you said, you got it for free. I mean, a lot of people got Disney Plus stuff for free with certain things, and Apple TV Plus or whatever. You get it for free with any Apple product you get for a year, and they just keep like I got a new iPhone last year, and they just keep extending it for me. I don't know why. I'm not complaining.
No,
but like every few months, I'm like, oh, it's about to run out, and they're like, oh yeah, here's 3 free more months, and I'm like, okay, cool.
It's
we're 3.
The thing is too is like, and I definitely agree that cable TV as a whole, I think people are just watching less cable TV, which is true. However, I would say that if the show is good, I don't think it matters where it is. I mean, it could be $50 a month. If there's like, for me with like this show, like I'm going to reference The Blacklist again. If somebody was like, listen, you can watch season 8 of The Blacklist, but it's going to be $5 an episode, I'd be like, listen, here's my money. I want to watch the show because I love this show. I want to continue watching it. But no, I think from the outside looking in, as somebody who watched it as a kid, came back with my own kid and kind of fell out of it again, I think what I have found with a lot of these networks is I think that they are paying for wrestling based off of the heritage of it versus what's actually being broadcasted. Because I think like they think, oh my God, WWE, that's The Rock, that's Stone Cold, Hulk Hogan, you know? Because I mean, I remember there were reports of when they were going over to Saudi Arabia that they wanted like Yokozuna or something like that. It's like, hey, that guy's been dead for 20 years, or the Ultimate Warrior or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's like I know that. So I think to a certain degree, you know, like for example, the Fox deal. Obviously, these networks want content, especially on a cable TV where it is, you know, gradually dying out. They want content to put on there. But I think part of it too is they're also paying for more so the brand of WWE versus the product that's being delivered to people. Yeah.
It's so strange because the way WWE and AEW approach things are like polar opposites. It's more of like WWE is exactly what you said. It's just the WWE brand that's attached to all these names from, you know, years and years past, and they don't really care about. It's almost like they don't care about the content they create in a way where it's almost like, you know, because even people who watch it, they're like, yeah, it's not that good, you know. And the biggest criticism I hear about AEW is like, it's really good, I just know it can be better, and I want to be just that much better. And I'm like, yeah, they're still learning, they're still working with the network, you know. I enjoy it for what it is, but like I said, it's definitely not perfect. They definitely have their faults, but they're very aware of their like fan base, and I've seen them change stuff. Like if people complain about shit super hard online after something happens, I've seen them fix it the next week on TV, like, or 2 weeks later or something like that. They're insanely aware of their fan base, and they react according to it. They don't exactly cater to it, but if something's really not working, they realize it's not working and they fix it, you know? So I think that's really cool of them, because it's kind of like, I love Marvel, and Marvel kind of does the same thing a little bit. They're like fan servicey, but it's fan service that's owned. So it's not the bad kind. There's like two kinds of fan service. It's like, oh, here's fan service because it's cool. And then there's like, this is earned in story, but it's also a fan service moment. And that's mostly what they do. So it's kind of like that stuff. And even with AEW, like I said, they started in the big indies stuff, and they have like callbacks to all that stuff. So as far as like storytelling and stuff like that, it's like, it's crazy how far they can go back with stuff. And people are like, oh, that's from this match like 3 years ago or something like that. It's just, I love stuff like that. And WWE doesn't really do that at all anymore. It's funny because I call NXT is pretty much just PWG, which is like just really good. There's no storyline really. There was near the end, it started kind of developing a little more, but it's mostly just insane matches. Like they just put on the craziest matches ever, and that's really it. That's almost what NXT has become, their story, but it's very kind of like loose to me now, and it's more of just like them putting on the craziest matches they can possible. And all of their stars are dudes who are huge in the indies for the most part. Like it's like the indies on TV pretty much, just under WWE now for the most part.
No, that's So I guess the other thing that I'll add to kind of what just like an overarching view of like when I watch wrestling, what I enjoy. So it's so funny because I know with wrestling, you obviously think of the matches. The matches are pretty low on my list of priority for like what I like out of a wrestling show. Right. In fact, I think sometimes from what I had remembered, like coming back to watching WWE, it's like sometimes I feel like the matches are so long because they're like, oh shit, we got to fill 5 hours of TV. Let's just make this match 30 minutes. And sometimes it's like, okay, like I just kind of want it to end. And I think it kind of goes back to, it ties into music as well, where it's like a lot of music. If I find a song that's like 5.5 minutes, I'm like, this 5.5 minute song better be really damn good.
right.
I mean, it better be really good. So I really love like a good character. I like character development. It's like watching, like I treat wrestling as kind of like a regular television show. I try to think of it as like a Blacklist or The Office or Dexter or something, like something that has like really good, solid character development. A payoff at the end that's not too short but not too long. It's kind of, find that right moment of like, all right, this is where the payoff is at.
Yes.
I love charisma. I think like if somebody is really charismatic, that obviously leaps out to me. And a good storyline. Something that really they like, that not only is threaded throughout, but like understanding the importance of like, okay, this is our main thing. We're going to make this kind of like the thread throughout the show. Right? Because I noticed with WWE a lot when I had come back to it, it would be like, all right, the champion is Roman Reigns. He's here for 5 minutes. You never see him again. It's like, how is that possible? Right. He's literally the champion of the goddamn he's on TV for 5 minutes. Or like when they had Brock Lesnar, and I know that he had like a contract thing where he was only so many dates or whatever, but it's like, make the most of those dates, like, film pre-tapes or something like that, so you can like string them throughout and whatnot.
Yeah.
To me, it was just kind of a complacency and a lack of effort from when I was watching WWE. And I'm like, and I'm watching this and I'm like, do you guys realize the amount of television shows that are out there that are like way better? Like so much better. And it's like, and I feel like, I don't know what it is, man, but it's like, it's almost like they, with wrestling, from my point of view, it's almost like they were kind of like, all right, we may not be able to compete story wise with like these big shows like Breaking Bad or anything like that, but if we just kind of cater to our niche audience and, kind of like with music, like Every Time I Die, which is actually kind of funny because I know that Andy's on AEW.
Yes.
It's kind of the 1,000 true fans model. And I think I think wrestling's kind of become that a little bit, where it's like, listen, we're not going to probably ever get back to that 8.0 rating again. Well, let's just, make it the best experience we can for the fans that we do have. And I don't know if it will ever grow though. That's the only thing that I've noticed.
Yeah, that's because I feel like AEW does do that, but they've kind of been doing things like they had a match with Shaq on TV, which obviously was like a TNT deal, and actually it was pretty awesome. Like it was on. I was expecting nothing from the match. I was like, I hated it when I heard the rumors, and then it ended up being true, and I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. And the build was kind of lame, which sucks, especially with Cody Rhodes, because Cody Rhodes is like the storyteller in wrestling. He is like old school guy. He had a match with Justin Rhodes or Goldust in the first AEW pay-per-view, and it's probably the best AEW match that's happened. It was incredible, unbelievable how good it was.
I've heard of a lot of good things about that one.
It's so good. So the build was really weird, and it was kind of pieced in between different things. And I think it was because originally it was supposed to be his wife, Brandy Rhodes, was supposed to be in the match, but then she got pregnant. So they kind of had this other woman come in and replaced her. And I think that probably had something to do with it a little bit, which obviously you can't really do anything about that. But the match was awesome. Like Shaq ended up going through two tables.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. And he looked really awesome, honestly. Like I was shocked of how fun I had during the match, to be honest, because I went in being like, I don't know how I feel about this. But it was really cool. And obviously that's a good like promotion tool. Like, oh, Shaq's wrestling on TV. I need to watch that. Like any random person would go, oh yeah, I'll watch that, rather than just a wrestling fan or anything like that. So I feel like they've been trying to go to those things, and now they're signing, which we'll talk about a little later. They're kind of signing some old WWE people too, who are like legends, and they've been treating legends very differently than WWE does so far. It could change, which that's my worry about that kind of stuff. But like the way they treated Sting, which again, we'll talk about that much later, has been pretty awesome. And it completely different the way, because when he had his run with WWE, it was kind of whatever. The intro of him was awesome, but the execution, everything after, and then he ended up,
and then Seth Rollins killed him.
Yeah, he ended up pseudo retiring pretty much, but obviously was not the case. And I feel like AEW has been using him very, very awesomely so far. So that's what gets me excited for like Big Show being over here. And Big Show isn't even really, he's more of just going to be like a backstage guy, and like he's doing commentary for their new show on YouTube and stuff like that. He'll wrestle for sure. I definitely think, because there was a big thing that Shaq and Big Show were supposed to wrestle at WrestleMania. Yeah. And I feel like they're going to do it just to spite WWE, which is funny to me. But I definitely think that'll probably happen, and they'll probably use Big Show very sparingly, which is, I think, is good.
Yeah,
I think he'd be a good on-camera stuff, but he's old. Yeah, he's old, you know. But with all the talent AEW has, they can definitely do something really cool. Like I said, they had an awesome, convincing match with Shaq, who's never wrestled in his life, you know. So
Shaq is a spectacle, man. I know, even just from watching, you know, I know that they have like the pregame basketball shows with him and Charles Barkley.
Yeah.
I would love for AEW to book a match with him versus Charles Barkley. I think that'd be awesome, because those guys
that would be wild.
Yeah, it would be funny. It's like, see, that's the kind of stuff in wrestling that I love, is like the spectacles. It's like what you said.
Yeah.
My problem, what I have found though, is that it's like, okay, you're gonna do these types of matches, but what else are you going to have around it to keep the people interested? Because people will come for Shaq, they'll come for not Muhammad Ali, but
Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson. There you go. Muhammad Ali. He's a little. I think, did he die? I don't know. Either way, Mike Tyson, back in the day, or you know, just these other guys. It's like, that's cool. I think that it will pique people's interest. Mm-hmm. It's what you do after that and before that, I think, is what will really set you up to hook fans in for the long term.
Yeah, and AEW actually had Mike Tyson. He was there to present the first TNT title belt, which Cody Rhodes was a part of. And then they did this angle with him and Chris Jericho, which never got paid off. And I think it's because Mike Tyson did that fight.
Okay.
But I think they'll probably come back to it, because obviously Chris Jericho and Mike Tyson have shit that goes back to WWE itself.
Yeah, right.
So I think they'll come back to it eventually. And Jericho, as you've seen since you watched this pay-per-view and the Dynamite after, Jericho has his hands full right now, so that's fine. That's fine. So yeah, if you want to, did you watch the pre-show match or no?
I did not. I just watched AEW, the main card, and then the Dynamite. I see on our notes here the buy-in match. Is that what this is?
Yeah. It was Riho and Thunder Rosa, which Riho was the first AEW Women's Champion, and Thunder Rosa was the former NWA Women's Champion, and versus Britt Baker and Rebel, who was changed to Maki Ito, who was a popular Japanese wrestler.
Okay.
And it was a fun match. It was just like, you know, like a normal pre-show to kind of get things warmed up and everything. But it was cool. Riho and Thunder Rosa won, if I remember correctly. And then the events of it kind of led into the beatdown that happened at the end of the Women's Championship match, which led to that 6-woman tag match on Dynamite.
Yeah,
that's the main of that. It wasn't, you know, there wasn't anything crazy in it. It was just like a normal tag match, but it was cool. It was a cool match. But the show proper kicks off with the Young Bucks, who are the tag champions, versus Chris Jericho and MJF, which the Chris Jericho MJF stuff has been unbelievable. So I know you're probably not familiar, but they had this whole thing. Like, MJF is pretty much the most real heel in wrestling, like across the board.
Yeah, even I've heard about him. Yeah, that seems to. I know he said like "F them kids" or something like that. I remember. I remember that. I like that. I like that.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's the best heel ever. He's so great. And they kind of had this thing where MJF's like, okay, I want to join the Inner Circle, and they had like a match, Chris Jericho versus MJF, and if MJF won, they would let him in. They had this crazy segment called the Dinner Debonair, where it literally was a song and dance number with Chris Jericho and MJF on TV.
Okay. Yeah,
it was amazing. I did not see it coming, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. They did a bunch of awesome segments of like them going to Vegas together, and like it's just been great. I mean, Chris Jericho is just amazing. Like, I don't know, he's just one of the best. He's one of the most entertaining people in wrestling period ever.
Yeah.
So this match was really, really awesome. There was a bunch of like really cool spots. You know, they had, I don't know if you caught on, but they ended the match with, they call it the Meltzer Driver, whereas they had him in the tombstone, and he does the 450 springboard into doing it. They have that, and they have another one called the Indie Taker, where it's really just a springboard like assisted tombstone.
Mhm.
And there was a spot where they went for that, and it was reversed into a code breaker, which is Jericho's finish, which I thought was insane. They did a lot of really cool finishes with that. I loved one of the Jacksons getting hit with the bat, and then MJF doing that second rope pile driver, which he calls the Heat Seeker. Very, very cool match. And they hit MJF with like a million super kicks, which that's their thing, like super kick party. It's like their thing. You could hear it in their intro and everything like that. And then they held him with the BTE trigger, which is one of those things that they used to call. It was Kenny Omega and his old partner Kota Ibushi, who's the champion in New Japan right now. They were a tag team called the Gold Lovers, and they called it the Golden Trigger. But they had a big rivalry with each other, Young Bucks and Golden Lovers. So they ended up taking that move from that rivalry pretty much, which MJF kicked out at 2 at, and then it ended up ending with the Meltzer driver, which they never really hit anymore. So when they hit it, that's like a big deal. They don't really do it. They usually end matches with the BT trigger nowadays. So it was cool to see that because it's not really a seen thing a lot nowadays. But what did you think of this match being a AEW newcomer, I guess?
Okay. This might be where our relationship suffers a little bit, Sean.
Oh, no.
Okay. Obviously, I know Chris Jericho. I think everybody does. MJF, I've heard some good things about him. He seems to kind of really embrace the heel character, which I think that's cool. The Young Bucks, I obviously have heard about them. I've never really watched anything to do with them before. But there was some things in this match that I noticed that are very modern wrestling, and I just cannot bring myself to get into it.
Okay.
One of them is these guys dive out of the ring all the time, and I'm like, if that was me, I'd get out of the way, and nobody ever does that. They're all just like, whoa, and they just kind of like absorb the hit. It's like, if I turned around and you were diving out of the ring at me, I'd be like, oh, and then move. Like, that's what I would do. But they never do that. And I'm like, it just kind of looks a little bit, depending on how they set it up, I guess, would be like would be more so. But later on in the match, I noticed this because I was trying to pay attention for some stuff. There was one part where I can't remember which buck it was, but he did like a one of like those where he hit MJF through on the stomach through the second rope.
Yeah.
And MJF was bent over, but while he was bent over, I could see him like looking up, like anticipating the move to happen, and I'm like, oh no, because you can just tell that he's just waiting for the move to happen. So there's just some stuff like that I noticed that like. Because I'm not really like a big like UFC fan, so it's like with wrestling, obviously, I mean the cat's out of the bag at this point in terms of its reality. I mean we understand that, but there's just something where it just looks like it's just so set up that it's not like to me it doesn't simulate combat, so to speak, like which is kind of what I like. I just to kind of get in quick, make it look like a fight. The match ends in a few minutes because this match went like over 20 minutes, if I believe, or about 20 minutes. So I hate to say it, but it kind of went on so long for me because this was already like a 4-hour pay-per-view. I'm like, it didn't need to be that long, in my opinion. But I get that people are into that style nowadays. I haven't been able to get into it personally. Yeah,
there's the big people gathering together for like a jump spot off the top rope to the outside kind of thing that bothers people. It doesn't really bother me that much. I get why people don't like it. I just don't look into it that much, I guess. And like the looking up kind of stuff, it's kind of like, I mean, as far as this not being real, obviously not real, but like the shit they do is very real still. The outcome isn't real, but the shit they do is still real. Obviously it's assisted and protected and everything like that.
Right.
But you still got to protect the people in there. It's like bad things can happen, if you're not careful. So some of those things, like the looking up and stuff, I kind of overlook. Though the diving thing does make sense. It's funny because on Dynamite and that TNT Championship match, Scorpio Sky did an amazing counter to a dive, which that's exactly what I thought of. And you're like, I would just move out of the way. And he did. He moved out of the way and turned into a counter, which is awesome, which happens sometimes too. But I definitely get it. Some I feel like dives should be more special and a lot of times they're not, which I get.
That's that. I guess that's what I mean, because like some matches that I have seen, with the more modern day style wrestling, it's like there's like 54 dot. It's like how is nobody caught on to move out of the way at this point? Because
everyone's really stupid, obviously.
Right. Well, I try to think of it like, and I know this is kind of weird considering, obviously like what the like everything that they're performing is real, obviously, but like obviously they're not actually kicking each other in the face. Maybe sometimes with certain wrestlers. But no. I guess I just try to think of like if this were real, how would like you know what I mean? Like I try to think of it like if I got kicked in the face repeatedly, I would be dead. Like you could pin me 1, 2, 3 after doing that. So yeah, I mean I guess for me, with this match, what it really boils down to is, and you'll see this on my reaction videos to a lot of music. I'm like, it's just too long. It just kind of went on for too long for me.
Yeah, it's a championship match, so it makes sense to me that it was a little bit longer. They don't like to make them very fast, though. I do agree that the AEW pay-per-views have been a little too long, but I don't think it's the match length that bothers me. I just feel like some of the matches don't need to be there, and that's kind of mean, I guess. But and I get it. There's only 4 a year, and you pay $50 for it. You want to get your money's worth, but I think fans would be perfectly fine with a 3-hour show of like all killer, no filler, because that was, I really loved this pay-per-view, and there's obviously something at the end that kind of ruined it for a lot of people, which we'll obviously get to.
We'll talk about it.
But I do feel like the pacing of the show, which usually they're very good at, the pacing of the show was very weird. It was like it started off the gate like real hard and then ended very hard too, to an extent. But like the last match was insane. Like the last 2 matches were insane. So it was kind of like it like lost it in the middle a little bit. And it's like almost if some of that was taken out, it could have done a lot better. And they usually do start off with something like they'll start, if they have a ladder match, they'll start off with a ladder match, or they'll start off with the Young Bucks doing a tag match because they know it'll be a killer match. They kind of want to start it off like very impactful, which I get. But I think with this one, it kind of like, it started off good, but then in the middle, it it didn't drag, but it wasn't the same excitement I had for the beginning and the end, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'm telling you, Sean, our relationship will be hindered probably.
I don't think so.
Okay, good. Okay, because you're a nice guy. I don't want you to be mad at me.
No. I'm not gonna be mad at you for your opinion. You can disagree. I don't care. That's fine. Yeah. So those are your main thoughts on that match, pretty much.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things, man. That it's just like. And I'll relate it back to music again. There reaches like a wall of like I've just lost interest at this point. Like it's just gone on for so long that I'm kind of like, okay, next. It sounds mean, but that's just kind of how I've always really liked wrestling. Is like a lot of people complain that the matches used to be 3 minutes long, 4 minutes long. I loved that because it was like that's the next thing, and like I loved that. So. Yeah.
Obviously, the big thing about this match rolling into Dynamite was the ending segment of Dynamite, which MJF was tricking all of the Inner Circle to turn on Jericho, but really they were sticking with Jericho, and it led to his new stable, which included FTR, which they were from WWE before, Tully Blanchard, who's obviously a member of the Four Horsemen, Shawn Spears, who is also from WWE, and Wardlow, who is MJF's right-hand man, which Wardlow is fucking awesome. I love that guy. I think he's terrifying and awesome. and he can do a backflip, and he's that big, which is cool to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always love when a big man can move like that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't understand how. That moment, so pretty much since FTR and Tully Blanchard have been a group, everyone and obviously Arn Anderson is a part of the company with Cody. There's been speculation that a Four Horsemen-like group will end up forming. A lot of people thought Cody would end up being in it. A lot of people thought this dude, Nick Aldis, would end up being in it.
Yeah, I know Nick Aldis, yeah.
He's awesome. He's the NWA champion. Him and Cody actually had a big rivalry over the NWA championship. A little leading up to AEW. There was people thought he was going to be in it. And if Spears was with Tully, but you never saw Tully with Spears and FTR at the same time, it was very weird. And then Spears kind of left for a while, and then he showed up helping them out a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
FTR and Tully. So I was like, okay, he's back. He's with them. That's cool. And they had this weird 4 horseman moment where they did the 4 to Arn in the tunnel and stuff. And people thought like, oh, Cody's going to turn heel and then Arn will come with them over and that'll be the 4 horsemen and stuff like that. But obviously that didn't happen. MJF's a part of it. And it's kind of like a 5 horsemen outsiders kind of thing, which is really cool. It's like, I am so stoked because FTR is like insane. They're like one of the best tag teams in the world. They had an incredible match with that's who the Young Bucks won the titles off of a few months ago, and they had an incredible match together. They had some of my favorite matches in NXT when they were in NXT. They got totally wasted on the main roster, which is the story for so many people in WWE. But that angle was awesome. I did not see it coming at all. I thought it was very cool. I don't know how you felt about it because obviously you're not like invested in this as much. But it was still a pretty wild beatdown watching it from like not knowing a lot of context about it. You know,
so they
beat the fuck out of Chris Jericho.
Yeah, so you're talking about when they I think they power bombed him off of the stage.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I guess my only thing with FTR, which I know used to be the Revival, and Shawn Spears, who was who's the 10 guy? What's his name? Ty Dillinger, right? Yeah, him. And obviously, it kind of obviously goes. My preconceived notions of these guys go back to because I only know them through. I know a lot of fans of AEW probably know FTR since they were in diapers. You know, they just know their whole career trajectory. I only know them from WWE. And I only know Ty Dillinger from WWE, and they were just presented as nobodies essentially. And so, like to me, that was the impression that I got from them because I didn't really see anything. Because part of it is the writing, right? Like, I mean, that's a big part of it. And I always give the wrestlers credit for their in-ring work, even though that's not something that I'm particularly like interested in when I watch wrestling. I can appreciate the hard work they put into their craft. But the writing aspect of it is where it really comes in with guys like those, because let's face it, I mean, you look at FTR, you look at Ty Dillinger, they don't look like Wardlow or they don't look like guys like that. They kind of look like, for the lack of a better term, everyday people. So it's really about how you present them as a character and write for them that really can showcase who they are and kind of give you that emotional connection to them. So when I saw this, I got to admit, I was like, okay, so you have Tully Blanchard, who's a legend, and then you have just a few guys from WWE who were, I mean, borderline like nobodies. So that's how that was to me. I was just like, oh, okay. So I don't really see the intensity here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the writing you're talking about was there. It's just you haven't seen it because it's from the past.
I'm not familiar. I went my first ever AEW viewing experience, so I'm only going off of what I am seeing in the moment, and if they have been on WWE from when I had watched it when I got back into it with my son, my impressions of them then.
Yeah, pretty much FTR, they've lost once, and it's when they lost the titles. That's the only time they've lost in AEW. They came in as a big deal because I guess the wrestling community has always valued them as important, and it's mostly because of what they did in NXT. Because they weren't a tag team before WWE at all, and I don't think they were very known on the indies, at least as far as I know. I found out them through NXT. And like I said, they were 2-time NXT tag champs. They put on seriously, like they were 2-time match of the years in NXT and stuff like that. And like, I think they have like a couple Dave Meltzer 5-star matches from NXT and everything like that. Like they are like the one of the best tag teams from NXT, period. So people kind of, when they got moved up, people were bummed because they got wasted. Pretty much, they got completely wasted because people knew who they were and knew what they could do, and they never got to live up to their full potential at all. So when they left and they showed up in AEW, people was like, "Oh!" And people have been begging for them versus the Young Bucks for years. Like the Young Bucks even tweeted, one day the Young Bucks and the Revival will wrestle each other and everyone will rejoice. And it ended up being a 5-star match. So people did rejoice, so I think that's like a part of it. If you didn't watch NXT, I can see why you're like, oh, these dudes are losers, because they were presented as losers on WWE TV for sure. But again, they were completely and utterly wasted. So when they came here, everyone was stoked. They've been treated as a big deal from the get-go. And it hasn't been like I said, they lost once. And that's it. Shawn Spears, it's kind of weird because when he came in, he did this crazy rivalry with Cody. Yeah, it was this crazy chair shot. It was like, yeah. It was a brutal, like unprotected head shot with a chair, which is like a big no-no. They actually got a lot of flack for it. It was like a rigged chair, but it like he got a huge gash in the back of his head. Like something still kind of went wrong. So when he came in, he was a pretty big deal, but then he kind of fell off. So even him coming back was still, it's like, oh, it's Shawn Spears, cool, but he's teamed with all these other guys, so that's what kind of makes it important. He's just like the other guy, I guess. Yeah. So I definitely get your criticism for sure.
I guess my other thing too, and you might be a good person to ask this question to, because I don't really have anybody else to ask it to. But I guess, I just don't, there's a few things that I have trouble grasping when it comes to wrestling. Well, number one, I don't understand the Meltzer stuff. Because to me, from what I have seen, he doesn't really explain what he finds good in a match. Like, it's kind of like this is a 5-star match because I said so. There's no like dissecting and be like, oh, like, and when they did this really showcased this. I never hear him say that. Right. And then also, like, what makes a match good? I have no idea. Like, I mean, I could watch it. I don't know if this is good or bad. I only base it off of pretty much time at this point. So you're a good person to ask this question to.
To me, it's like a mix of build for the whole rivalry, like story in the match, like if there's callbacks to certain moments and stuff like that. It's like a big plus for me. Just the way it flows, like if it just flows really nicely. Yeah. Length can play a part if there's parts that are too slow within the match, for sure. So pace is a big thing. And I guess unpredictability. Because like a lot of times I could probably go through this whole card and guess the winner for almost all of them, and they would have been right. Like, obviously I knew MJF and Young Bucks, or like I knew the Young Bucks were going to win. Like, and they have surprised me, and that's the best part. If it's surprising, and like obviously like the near falls is like a big thing in new wrestling, like a bunch of kickouts at 2, which I love too, because that things that make you think that something was predictable and that ends up makes you question it. I love that when they're like, oh shit, I thought they were going to win, and they kick out at like barely 3. I'm like, oh fuck, like are they going to win? I love that kind of stuff too. So those are the things that really make it for me. I think those are the big things. But yeah, if I went down the whole card, I probably could have guessed the outcome of every single match, which sucks. But if they still deliver a solid match to me, I don't really care. It's like, it's fine. Right. But if they surprise me, then cool. That's cool too.
So did you say that the Dynamite before this pay-per-view, it ended showing MJF getting those guys to turn on Jericho, or like attempting to get? Is that how it ended? Is that what you said?
It's not how it ended. They've been kind of planting the seeds in that for like months. Like the whole thing with Sammy Guevara coming in, like he pushed Sammy out, and like MJF kind of manipulated Chris Jericho to seeing as like, no, Sammy's in the wrong, I'm in the right kind of thing. But they kind of knew from like they were all very hesitant to bring him in from the start, because obviously MJF has been portrayed as like a super shitty dude. He was best friends with Cody, turned on Cody in a rivalry with Chris Jericho and everything like that. So this dude has a history of turning on his best friends, know? So it's like, why do you trust this guy? And it's like the whole point. It's like, why is Chris Jericho trusting this guy? And it's like, they really, at the end of the day, they showed that he didn't. Like, he knew this was going to fucking happen. He was just always ready for it. He was like, I'll let him in. We'll do this together. And then when he turns, which I know he will eventually, we got it covered kind of thing.
See, I would have almost wanted them to beat the Young Bucks then, knowing all that information. That would have made it really interesting. Like if they
the only thing with that though, if they that wouldn't have caused the breakup yet, because why would they break up and have the tag titles? You know, that's the only because Santana and Ortiz, who are in the inner circle, faced the Young Bucks the week before for the tag titles, and I was kind of hoping they beat them and then had to face like an inner circle like face off for the titles. I would have liked that a little bit more because that would have been surprising. But I can get why they wanted to keep it on the Young Bucks because it was such a journey for them to even win the titles at all. So like I get it in a way, but like I said, like if you surprise me, that's like the big thing for me.
Yeah, I guess I think of it like if they did win, you know, you could have had something where maybe MJF, like, just, you know, he was just like, I don't want this title. Here you go, take it. And then there could have been like something within the inner circle to try to battle to see who could have been Chris Jericho's tag team partner. Maybe there was some inner turmoil. I don't know. I just think of stuff like that could have been interesting. Maybe. I mean, again, I don't know. I don't know any of the backstories or anything like that. I'm just kind of spitballing up.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So so I guess we'll get into the tag team battle royal. It was so many teams, but the reason the length of this one was fine because it was just like so many different people in. You weren't seeing the same thing. Yeah, you weren't seeing the same thing over and over because obviously there was so many people coming in. I thought it was really cool. I loved that. So the Phoenix, the guy who was part of the team who won, this dude is incredible. He's so
athletic. He's
insane. And actually, there's a wrestling show you would probably love that isn't around anymore. It's called Lucha Underground, and it was produced by the same guy who produces Survivor. And Phoenix and Pentagon were that's what made them big because they were just AAA guys, but then they were on the show on TV. Brian Cage was on it. Ricochet, who's in WWE, was in it, but he wore a mask. John Morrison was in it. Like a ton of guys who were either in AEW or WWE pretty much were in it and are pretty big parts of both. It was super cool, but like they did these crazy, kind of like how the Darby Allin and Sting match was. It's kind of how a lot. It's kind of how a lot of their matches were. Honestly, like they had real matches, but the cut scenes and like backstage stuff was very cinematic and like super cool.
Sounds cool.
But Phoenix and Pentagon, like that's literally what made them stars in America. Was that show? Pretty much. After that show, they started getting booked on the Indies. That's why they ended up in Impact and everything like that. Mm-hmm. I love them both. I think they're like the best. And I'm kind of glad seeing them getting pushed to the forefront a little more. Like obviously Pentagon is going to have a match with Cody next week, and Phoenix and Pac are going to have a match for the titles against the Young Bucks, which I think is going to be just craziness because they're nuts. They're all so fast. Like they're just so fast.
Yeah.
They do things so fluid. It's just like when he does that crazy, like that elimination he had where he kicked John Silver and he does the tightrope kick thing. Like every time I see it, I'm like, how does he do that? Like, how does he do that? Like how? It's crazy.
No, he reminded me a lot of like a Rey Mysterio. Like a Rey Mysterio. He was very athletic. See, there's certain guys who I'm okay with that because like that's who they are. Like they're very like this is like, okay, I'm a luchador. You know, this is kind of what I do. I'm a super hyper athletic guy. So I think that's cool. I'd say I put in my notes here. I'll read you my notes word for word. I put don't know a lot of these teams, which is to be expected. And then I put the Dark Order is a terrible name for these people because they do not look like a Dark Order at all.
Oh, so here's the thing with that. So when they were first introduced, they were very like bad guys, very menacing. And this guy Brody Lee, who was Luke Harper in WWE, he was revealed as the leader. And they did this crazy beatdown on Cody when he ended up beating Cody for the TNT title. And like they beat the fuck out of Cody. Like they literally put him on a stretcher and he like knocked him off the stretcher. It was nuts. It was like one of the craziest beatdowns I've seen in wrestling TV like ever.
Okay.
It was insane. Very cool. So they were very much bad guys. And then he passed away and it kind of made them like the biggest baby faces in the world, you know, because everyone loved them now. And John Silver is just hilarious. He's so funny. He's just the funniest dude ever. So they kind of like leaned into it. They kind of made him look like the stupid henchman. Like Brody Lee would always freak out on him and he'd always just be funny. But when they first did it, it was very like serious and ominous and dark.
Okay.
But, so I can get what you mean now because now they're like the biggest, goofiest baby faces in the world. But when they first started, they were the exact opposite.
There's that one guy. He looks like a how do I say this? I guess like a dollar store version of Sami Zayn. He has like the red beard. Who's that guy? He wears a mask. He has like a red beard. He's part of the Dark Order.
5?
Maybe. Yeah, him. I just saw this team and I didn't know any of that with the backstory, but it's almost like at this point, shouldn't they just kind of repackage them? Because I mean, when you hear the Dark Order, I'm expecting like people to come out in like robes and like chanting.
That's exactly how they came out almost.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what I'm expecting when I hear them. But then I see like these guys just like running out to the ring and I'm like, and they have like a mask that looks like they had it, at the like one of those pop-up Halloween stores. I'm like, what the hell is this? So I get that they probably just kind of leaned into it. Obviously, circumstances with Brody Lee. I totally get that. I do think that they should do something different with them, though, and not call them the Dark Order, because if that's the Dark Order, I mean, it's not very dark. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out too, and maybe this is just kind of me being in the scene, metalcore scene or whatever, but you have Andy, who is he, Butcher or Blade? Which one is he?
He's the Butcher.
He's the Butcher. Okay. Have they ever referenced him being like in a pretty popular band? Have they referenced that? Oh, they have. Okay. Because I was going to say,
it's just like,
yeah,
it's not a big deal to the casual fan base of people who watch TNT, because their debut went off like crickets because no one knows who the fuck they are in the wrestling world,
Right.
But me, I was like, holy fuck, it's Andy from Every Time I Die on my TV. And that made a bunch of people who didn't watch wrestling start to watch wrestling because Andy from Every Time I Die was watching it. But again, that's the numbers comparatively are so like seesawed. Like, here's the people down here that like
makes sense,
and then here's the people who are like, who? I guess
I wish that they kind of presented him differently, like maybe like as like a guitar player, like a kind of character. I think that would have been kind of cool.
I think that's been his persona, like the Butcher and the Blade thing. They like built it. They've really only wrestled in like Buffalo, Canada kind of stuff. That's why they weren't really well known to like most of the larger wrestling fan base.
Okay.
But that's kind of been their thing. And I think he probably wants to keep it separate. Like, if they talk about him being Every Time I Die, he's like, cool, that's fine. But I think he wants to keep like, this is his character in TV, and like, then like, oh, hey, I
that's probably
true.
You know
what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a guess. I have no idea. Like, I have candid conversations with Andy Williams and he explains this to me.
Right, I just see people chanting Judas, and I'm just like, come on, there's much better songs out there, because you have a guy who's in a band that has much better songs than Judas. You know what I mean?
It's a catchy song, though.
It is catchy. I'll give you that.
Yeah, it's a catchy song.
I don't
think it's the best song in the world, but
right. I'd love to hear people in the crowd like chanting some like just chaotic Every Time I Die. So I'm just like, it'd be kind of funny to see the crowd kind of chant that. But no, man, I think it's like what you said. This match. Obviously, it was going to be longer. I mean, there's like literally like 83 teams in this thing.
Yeah, for real.
Like, the only thing that I kind of also noticed was like there were very few guys who like stuck out as different, and Phoenix was one of those. And I was like, oh, okay, this guy's different from the rest of what's happening here. But a lot of the other guys just kind of seemed very similar. Like nobody really stuck out as like, oh, okay, that guy's interesting. But Phoenix, who's jumping around, is obviously a luchador, the high athleticism. I think that's all cool. I know Pac because he was Neville in WWE. And I think that's about it for the people who I like knew.
That makes sense.
So, but that was kind of my only other critique. I was just kind of like, okay, like I'm seeing this Phoenix guy. Not that I'm like the end all be all evaluating wrestling talent, but I remember watching the match. I'm like, okay, this guy's team has to win because this guy is very different from everybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm stoked to see them and the Young Bucks face off. So I was very okay with it. And Pac has also been valued very differently as he was in WWE. I mean, kind of near the end until he lost to Enzo. That was insanely stupid. But ever since he left, he's been like one of the most serious. He pretty much his whole like heel gimmick in WWE turned up to like 20.
has been him since he left. Like obviously they call him the bastard and everything, and it's kind of weird because they kind of shifted him to like almost like a baby face in a way, but he still wrestles like a fucking like he's just mad at the world, but still does crazy flippy shit. It's like he's so fast. Like I would not want to get kicked by this guy, even if it was a fake kick. Like I don't even care. Like the way he like wrestles is nuts. Like
yeah, and you have to leave this guy as a kind of like this guy just doesn't look like a nice guy. You know what I mean? He just has like that mystique about it. Like even when he talks, it's just like, yeah, this guy's never gonna be like, here's $20, go to the movie. You know, he's not gonna be a nice guy. He's just gonna be like, I'm gonna kick your teeth. Like he just kind of presents that, and he's like a very interesting looking person too, because he's not like big, but his body's like he's just like he's a very interesting looking guy. So those are my takeaways from it. All in all, lots of people kind of looked the same. Phoenix obviously stuck out. I know Pac in the Dark Order. Having not known the backstory, my first impressions were this cannot be the name for this. It's got to change. Yeah.
And now I like it because it's like ironic, it's like Dark Order. They were presented like a cult, like a full-on cult. Like they even had like a Kool-Aid thing where you drink the Kool-Aid and shit like that. It was nuts. So now it's just kind of funny. I think it would just hurt them because it's like now they're trying to like honor the legacy of Brody Lee. You know what I mean? So like changing the name would kind of be like a weird takeaway on that. Like I don't think they'll last forever, but the thing they're doing with Hangman Page is definitely adding interest and like depth to everything within it. Because he's kind of been like, I don't want to join, but I'm like friends with you guys, and I think he'll eventually end up being the leader. I think probably that's my guess.
Sure. I just hope that they do. I just hope that they find a way on TV to like kind of let people in on the irony of it, while also explaining the backs. Because like for me, I'm a perfect example. Like I tuned in and I'm like, wait a minute, these guys are the Dark Order. Like
it's just hard. It's hard to kind of explain the full backstory. It's like almost like jumping into a season of TV like mid-season and being like, you didn't explain any of this to me. It's kind of like the same kind of thing. It's hard. Obviously in like pay-per-views, they kind of do a thing where you can watch it and they'll do the promo packages where you're like, oh, okay, this is how we got here. Cool. I have a loose understanding of what the fuck's going on. Like I'm sort of here. I get it. But I do get what you mean. It's hard. Like I don't know really how they could fully do it other than doing those kind of things they do when they lead to like a pay-per-view match and stuff. They do show kind of stuff like, oh, this is what happened last week and stuff like that. But going super far back is kind of hard. And sometimes they do reference stuff in commentary and everything like that, obviously. But it's a lot to be like, oh, hey, this match is happening. Here's a 5-minute like backstory on why this matters. It's tough to be able to kind of do that kind of thing.
Yeah. True. Yes.
But I get what you mean. I get it. I understand. Next up was the women's titles match. Karoshiga versus the women's Eliminator tournament match. Ryo Mizunami. This has been one of the biggest faults of AEW has been the women's division. It hasn't had much story involved, in my opinion. They have created a bunch of new stars from like Japan, like Riho and Karoshiga herself. Even Ryo Mizunami, like I didn't think she was going to win the tournament at all. But they built her like through the tournament, and she beat Nyla Rose, who was a former champion, and it kind of made her feel important, which was good on their part. It's just they've signed so many stars that have been males, and they've tried hard to kind of make these women stars, but I feel like they need some known entities,
like
to kind of help
Victoria or like
something,
Stratus or something like that,
to help build it up. Like Britt Baker has become a star through all of this for sure, and she's become like very captivating and very good. And Thunder Rosa is a pretty well name to an extent to like known wrestling fans because she was in Lucha Underground, she was NWA champion, she's been like pretty popular. But still, it's like that's only like one person, and they have Serena Deeb, who is the NWA champion now, who is like she was in WWE, she was part of the Straight Edge Society with CM Punk and stuff like that, and she's like a really really good wrestler. But at the same time, it's like it's not like a name like if like Charlotte left WWE and she came over or something like that, you know, like they need a couple more names in the division to kind of help bring everything else up. And they've done a better job with stories and stuff, but in my opinion, they still have a long way to go. Pretty much the most captivating story has been Thunder Rosa versus Britt Baker, which we now know they're kind of trying to settle the rivalry in the first women's main event in Dynamite history of them doing like pretty much a hardcore match, like a no holds bar match next week, which should be very, very good and very cool. And I'm glad they're doing that. It's like they just need to do that with more people within the division rather than just 2 people. And that's crazy. It's like the most captivating story in the women's division isn't for the title, you know, like
right. Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, they haven't really built anyone up to be big enough to beat Karoshiga for her title. So it's her and Thunder Rosa had an awesome match that she ended up beating Thunder Rosa, which was really cool. But I kind of wish they did like a title versus title thing, which they didn't. But again, and this match was fine. It was okay. Like it was pretty good, especially for like really having they kind of tried to build more into it during the match, being like, oh yeah, you know, Hikaru Shida never beat her in Japan and stuff like that. But it's like, it's not a lot to grab onto to be invested in this one. I was like, there's no way Hikaru Shida's losing. I was like, there's no way she's going to beat to this person who isn't that well known, even though she won the tournament, which is awesome. And that helped build her a little bit, but it was just, I knew she was going to win. There was no way she was going to lose in my mind, you know? So, but it was a solid match. It was cool. It was, you know, hard hitting. They did the thing, but not one of the most memorable matches of the pay-per-view to me, you know?
Yeah.
In my opinion, you know?
Yeah, this was tough.
I see your face. I'm like,
listen, man, so I went into it. I'm like, okay, I'll give this a shot. I went into it, and you started off, and they kind of did like these little slap gimmick, and I'm like, no, I just checked out. I was just like, this is like the most cartoonish thing I've ever seen on wrestling, because it's like I think it was Rio who was like slapping her, and then she like I think in Hikaru, I'm looking at the notes here because I honestly don't remember the names. She looked like she was being shot, like, and I was like, she's doing this. Wait, what's going on?
Well, all I have to say, have your friend start slapping you in the chest.
Well, no, like it was literally like a.
Oh
like,
yeah.
It was like I'm like, so I got to be honest with you. This was incredibly boring to watch. I mean,
that's fair. That's fair.
I mean, it was so boring. I just couldn't wait for it to end. And and listen, credit to them. Like you said, they did the thing. But as a viewer, I was like, man, I couldn't be any less interested. Yeah, and listen, I know you're gonna hate me after this podcast. I'm just going all in at this point, Sean.
I'm not gonna hate you.
You haven't even been that tough. I am a AEW fan, and I wasn't even really looking forward to this match that much because there's no stake in the game. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like there's no. It's like I knew. Like I said, I knew Hikaru was gonna win, regardless of the match being fine. It was pretty good. Like if I rated these matches, like Young Bucks and Chris Jericho and MJF, I thought that was a good match. Not like an amazing match, but it was good. It was entertaining to me. The Battle Royale, it was fun. It was cool. Like, you know, it was obviously a ton of action, high paced. Like, it was fun. And this one, I was like, it was okay. Like, this is what I mean. Like, in the middle, it kind of started to dip down a little bit, you know? And a main part of it has to do with the story to me. Like, the story just wasn't there. Like, even going to this next one, Miro and Kip Sapien, which Miro you probably know as Rusev, versus Orange Cassidy and Chuck Taylor. Like, Orange Cassidy, one of the coolest characters. He's so funny. He's just like a lazy dude, but he's just really good. But he's just lazy and doesn't. And Miro just looks like a fucking monster. But it's so weird because every time Miro gets in the ring in AEW, I'm like, okay, this is awesome because he just kills everyone because like he should. Dude is like a fucking freight train. Like obviously he should kill everyone. But the whole story behind this thing has been so weird. It started over a video game getting broken, and like I don't know, man. It was just weird. Like it's just been stupid. It's like almost been like a waste of Miro. But like every time he gets in the ring, I'm like, oh fuck yeah, this is awesome. That there was like a wedding with Kip Sapien and Penelope Ford that was like whatever. Orange Cassidy came out of a cake. It was just like, I don't know. I liked how they started it very serious and like he attacked them, was beating the fuck out of them, and like I liked that the match just ended because he killed them. They got a little offense in, which made sense. Like, don't make them look like total losers, because Orange Cassidy beat Chris Jericho twice. Like, he should be. It's like they made him. His gimmick was already over, and people loved him. Then he beat Chris Jericho, and everyone's like, "Oh fuck!" And then they kind of just haven't done enough with him to make him still feel at that same level as beating Chris Jericho. Because only a handful of people have beat Chris Jericho one-on-one in AEW. It's been not many people. So this is the same thing. Like, I figured Miro was going to win because they're going to make Miro look like a monster, but they haven't given me anything to like care about him other than him being mad about video games.
Yeah, and I guess for me, like I've heard, a lot of people are hyped about this Orange Cassidy fella, and I guess I view him as kind of like I almost would like him to have a gimmick where he's like this, like you said, like a lazy kind of confident jobber. Like the guy just gets absolutely killed every match, but is still just like, yeah, I'm the best. Like I think that's kind of an ironic character.
It's kind of what he has been, except when he started trying, he started winning some. But like he had a match with Pac, and it was awesome. It was pretty much Pac killing him for like 10 minutes, or like not even 10 minutes, like 5 minutes, and then he got some offense in, and then Pac ended up winning, and it was almost like Pac was like confused that he like did so well against him, kind of thing. And that was like the thing with him in the beginning. Like he was just like, everyone was like, what the fuck is up with this guy? And then he ends up like trying, and like he almost gets there, and then he finally started winning some, and then it kind of like reached a plateau, and it's just been there ever since. You know what I mean?
When I see, this guy get in the ring with Miro, I'm like, and again, I go back to, if this were real, this would be done in like, I would turn, look back, and it'd be over.
Right.
That's how fast it should have been. But I think the thing that I noticed with wrestling sometimes is like, they always want to let somebody get at least something in, which I think is kind of a bad idea. I don't for certain situations, like especially like Miro and Orange Cassidy, because I think Orange Cassidy got in a little bit of offense on Miro, which that'd be like if I got offense in on Miro. It happen, and it just like I would be dead. Like, and I accept that. Right. So I think for that, obviously we saw on the Dynamite after they kind of referenced the video game stuff again, which is just kind of I don't get that personally, but I get it. I know that Miro's on Twitch, so he's on Twitch, pal. So that was video game.
That was the big thing. Is it was right around when WWE is like, hey, our talent can't be on Twitch, so right. AEW has like him and Kip are both on Twitch, so they were like straight out promoting their Twitch links on AEW on national television, which I thought was funny, but I thought it would kind of just end there. It kind of explained that's why they're friends. Like, oh, we play Call of Duty together, blah, blah, blah. That's why we're bros. But then they kind of took it too far. Like if it started that way and then evolved into something else, I would have liked it. But like I said, this whole thing started because they broke a video game, and I'm like, why? What is that? Why?
See, and that goes back to like my thing where sometimes it gets too cartoony. Like if you want to like kind of set the groundwork of like, yeah, me and Kip are friends in real life, we play like that's cool because it's like real. I get that, but when you're like, all right, we're gonna see you at Revolution, you broke my PlayStation. It's like, what? Like, I'm just
exactly.
Just buy another one. Like you're literally making how much money? Just buy another one. It's all like, it's like, oh, that was my favorite Xbox 360 ever. No, just go buy another one. So that to me is kind of goofy. But get back to the match. I just think that this should have just been like a squash, especially since they
it still was.
It still was. But I mean like a literal like it almost would have been better if Miro just grabbed him, brought him out to the ring, and just for the formality of the match was just like, all right, here you go, pin and then leave, like something like that. Kick the crap out. Because then like the guy who, and like I think it's so goofy, like the guy who like literally just got demolished in the back, he's like, ring the bell. It's like, dude, really? Like this is, I guess AEW is based on wins and losses, and you want to take this? If that was me, I'd be like, nah, I'm out of here. Cancel this.
Right.
I don't want this on my record. But no, I always like seeing Miro. When Rusev was in WWE, I think that they killed him. I mean, the guy was coming out in tanks at WrestleMania, and then he was, a goon essentially. So that's too bad, because I do like Rusev, Miro a lot. But yeah, so those are my thoughts.
I do like that they've kind of showed more of his like real personality in
right.
AEW, but I hope and Tony Khan's kind of alluded that he's going to be a main event guy, but they didn't anticipate signing him that soon, but they couldn't not sign him, kind of thing.
Of course, yeah.
So I get it in a way. It's just I wish it was more than just like a video game thing. Like I feel like it's a waste for Miro and Orange Cassidy together, because Orange Cassidy is awesome, but not everything is going to be a compelling story. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I guess not. No, I guess I just wish that there was more meat on the bone, I guess, from the story.
Completely agree. Yeah, it's on the same page there for sure.
Okay.
And then next we get to Adam Page versus Matt Hardy. So Adam Page he was like a cool guy in the Indies. He was a part of the Bullet Club, but he was always kind of just a secondary guy. And then it was him versus Chris Jericho to be who was going to be the first champion at the first pay-per-view.
Okay.
And he lost, obviously, Chris Jericho won, which I think was the right move. But ever since then, it kind of made Adam Page like a star without being a champion. Him and Kenny Omega were tag champs for a long time, and it was kind of like a happy accident that evolved and just was awesome as them as a team together. And then it kind of ended up where it was like, is Page going to turn on them? Because it's like they kind of took the Bullet Club thing, and they were like, oh, we're all the elite. And Cody was involved in that too, but then he kind of just separated from them entirely and started his own story, which wasn't really explained, but it was fine because they just kind of just separated. So there's this big thing of him and the Bucks and Cody and them all being They had a match together, which was crazy. It was so fucking good. Which the Bucks lost to they always were like, they're not a real tag team, because they just like kind of formed together and ended up winning the titles.
Sure.
So that was like a big thing, and it was all like they all kind of made it seem like Hangman was going to turn on them, but then it was kind of really Kenny who left them out to dry, and then they ended up doing a tournament to see who would be the number one contender for the title, and the finals were Hangman versus Omega. Hangman ended up losing to Omega, and then Omega went and won the title against Jon Moxley. Mm-hmm. But really cool story. So that's like this whole Dark Order thing, is that they kind of approached him and they were like friends with him when he was kind of down and lost. And they were like, hey, will you join? And he's like, no, I tried the group thing. It didn't work out. I don't want to be in a group, kind of thing. And then they kind of reconciled and were like, hey, like, how about I got your back, you guys got my back, but I don't want to be in this group officially. And they're like, okay, yeah, we're cool. We're fine with that, kind of thing. And Matt Hardy kind of tried to swoop in, and his whole gimmick now is that he is like Big Money Matt, which was, I think it was the thing in TNA when he was in TNA. And basically he's trying to be this like big mogul manager to all these different talents where he gets a cut and everything like that. But he's like taking advantage of them, but still getting them opportunities. So he tried to trick Adam Page into this, but Adam Page swapped out the contracts, and it was really just a match card. But in the match, it was like whoever won got the other person's earnings for Q1 kind of thing. So it kind of played into it. So there's a little bit of story with this one, not a ton. And the match was okay. I mean, Adam Page is one of the best consistent wrestlers AEW has, and I love watching him wrestle. Obviously, Matt Hardy is pretty old. Can't do the things he used to be able to do, but they still put on a decent match. So this is kind of in the middle, where it's like two matches that were kind of whatever. This match was pretty good, but it wasn't amazing.
Yeah.
But it was just there.
Yeah,
it was almost a thing that didn't really need to be on pay-per-view almost. But I get wanting to feature Hangman Page on the pay-per-view. But even the last match probably didn't need to be on the pay-per-view either. And that's like a part of the thing of the length of this whole thing. If they cut those two out, that's like a good 30 minutes or something or maybe close to that they would have cut out of the pay-per-view and made it shorter. And they could have easily done these matches on TV, and they would have been fine on TV and probably flowed a lot better, because TV is only 2 hours,
Right. No, I think for me, obviously Matt Hardy is somebody that I'll be interested in, just nostalgia factor mostly. But then Adam Page, he's a guy who I think is actually like kind of like, oh, okay, this guy's different. He's kind of different from the rest of the cast.
Awesome.
So he seems like a guy who is interesting. my thing though, especially with you explaining Matt Hardy's gimmick, it's like, wouldn't he look at the contract before submitting it? Like, that's how I think of it. I'm like, wait a minute. So this guy is, this manager tycoon guy, so to speak. And like, he's just going to be tricked out because they switched I mean, it just seems kind of,
well, it is a little goofy, but the way they kind of filmed it is that he got Adam Page drunk and he's like, hey, here's this contract. I want to work together. We can make each other a lot of money. And then Adam switches it out and he's like, so he turns around and he's like, I'm getting this. He goes to the camera and goes, I'm getting this on film because he's probably gonna be really angry when he realizes what he signs tomorrow or whatever. And then so Adam Page switches it out with him not looking, signs it, and he's like, hey, I signed it. Do you want to sign it? And he like signed it in front of him. So it's like, even if he did look it over after the fact, he already signed it. Kind of like a loophole. It is goofy as fuck. Regardless, it's still fucking goofy.
I see what
it's also it's also wrestling. So it's like some stuff is just going to be goofy,
that's where I get like, I get that it's wrestling, but like also, I guess just paying attention to the fine detail. I guess I just want wrestling to be like treated more like in the realm of like a good TV show, because that kind of stuff is like,
that's fair.
It's just kind of goofy because it's like anybody who's like, okay, yeah, he got it on camera, but like nobody's gonna like be like, oh, you signed the switched out contract, you're beholden to it. Like, it just wouldn't happen. Like, this is not like a thing that would happen. So that to me is just a little goofy, especially like considering that Matt Hardy's been in wrestling since, before you or I were alive,
Yeah.
So I do like the players. It's just the story around it. I was just like, this is just really goofy. And then obviously we saw in Dynamite that they're like on like some lawnmower and the Dark Order. And I'm like, again, without knowing this backstory of the Dark Order, I was like, why are they on this lawnmower on the Dark? I mean, it's just kind of weird for me. But so all in all, the match, again, probably on the longer end. Even with Matt Hardy being older, it's still, the match kind of went a little bit too long for me. But I like the players involved. Story was just kind of like silly. Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely silly as fuck.
Very, very silly. Next, we had the ladder match, and the winner of the ladder match gets a TNT title match. They called it the Face of the Revolution match, which hilariously, which I think may be a little too overboard in meta, is that the thing you had to grab was a brass ring, which came from the Cesaro promo about talking how he needed to grab the brass rings from. It's been like a thing, like it's very meta, maybe a little too meta.
Right.
For this, but whatever. I guess they had to grab something. Brian Cage won a title match, and he had to grab like a casino chip because it was at Double or Nothing, and that's when he made his debut. I guess that makes more sense. So it's always just something weird hanging on the ladder. Whatever.
But it included Cody Rhodes, Penta El Zero Miedo, Scorpio Sky, Lance Archer, Max Caster, and the debuting Ethan Page, which Ethan Page is an awesome dude from the Indies. He was big in Evolve. He was just with Impact. He was on this awesome tag team called The North, which his partner is still under contract. So I feel like he'll eventually come over and they'll probably join forces. Okay. I would imagine, maybe not. But yeah, there was this ladder match. I thought it had a lot of really cool spots. I do think there was a lot of times you could kind of tell there was a lot of players that haven't really been in ladder matches and weren't used to it. Because there definitely seemed like there was parts where people were waiting for other people and shit like that, which kind of messed with the flow. But near the end, that's when it really started like picking up and things started happening. Like Ethan Page does this power bomb onto the ladder with like Lance Archer in the ladder, which was nuts. Like Penta does this crazy dive of the ladder that was leaned on the ropes and shit like that. It was entertaining match. Near the end, it really started flowing. Like at first, it was pretty janky. It's kind of a little rough in the middle. So what did you think of it overall, other than my notes, I guess?
Well, so my first note that I have here is, what is the Face of the Revolution? Like, what does that even mean? I have no idea.
It's the whole like TNT title match is like the TV title. They've treated it as a very important title, but it's almost like you're the face of TNT when you hold the title. So it's like them winning is like they're the face of Revolution, vying to be the face of TNT. That's kind of like the whole premise of it. Obviously, so I guess the winner of this one was a little surprising to me Cody was obviously the odds-on favorite. He's a 2-time TNT title champion. He's kind of like known as the face of AEW, and because he does a lot of the business press conferencey stuff, and he is a legitimate like EVP of the company. So are the Young Bucks and Kenny. They're like actual figureheads within the company as well as performers. So, but I didn't want him to win because I don't need to see him versus Darby again, at least for a while, because Darby beat him for it. So seeing a rematch now is kind of weird. I don't need that. And Darby's kind of been tied up in this whole Team Taz thing, and he's really only defended the title now on Wednesday 3 times since he's earned it. So I was hoping it wouldn't be Cody. Scorpio Sky is kind of cool because he is a really cool talent. And the match him and Darby had was awesome. Super sick match. They did a bunch of crazy counters I would have never thought of in that match, which was really cool. But they kind of they had the show Dark, where it's on YouTube. I don't even watch it myself, but he's been like really hot on Dark. So he kind of like, and he hasn't really been on AEW TV in a while. So I wish I just cared more about him winning, because they didn't really build that up enough to make me care about him winning. Like, it was cool. I was like, oh, that dude deserves it. The dude obviously works his ass off and he's an awesome wrestler. Mm-hmm. But I wish they kind of like included him in Dynamite a little more leading up to it. So it was kind of like oh, fuck yeah, he won kind of thing. After the match, it kind of gives more to it because he put on an awesome match and then he like turned heel at the end of it against Darby, which obviously is like a big push for his character moving forward. Mm-hmm. But if they added a little bit more to it, it would have made that even more impactful of him turning heel. Like, you're rooting this underdog dude to win this ladder match, to get a title opportunity, and then he falls just a little bit short. And that's like the cool thing with Darby, because it's like obviously he should like never win any match ever because he's so small, but he's like fast and tricky, and he always wins with these crazy like pin maneuvers, and he never,
he's a hoodlum. What do you expect? I mean,
he is a hoodlum. You're right.
He's a hoodlum. This is the 1940s. He's a hoodlum. The thing that see, this is where it kind of loses me, because if Darby's the TNT champion and then the winner of this match is the face of the Revolution, wouldn't that be Darby because he's the TNT champion? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
It's just weird wording. I don't know.
But then I know we're going to jump ahead a little bit. I know we'll get to Dynamite, but then Scorpio Sky loses. So, like, what good is that? You know what I mean?
He was the face for one night.
Yeah, he was the face. All right. Yeah. That's what I mean. So, okay. We'll touch more on that. But then what's his name? Max Caster? Is that what his name is? His little rap pre-promo.
Oh, yeah.
Really tied in a lot of like current events. I was like, oh, okay. I like this guy.
He's usually a tag team guy.
And I mean, that's like a little bit.
That's their whole gimmick, because they do like a freestyle rap in the beginning. But that was by far his best one. That was really good. That
was awesome. He tied in Governor really Cuomo, Dr. Seuss. Yeah. I was like, damn, okay, I can get on board. And then I put here, I'm just going to go through my notes here. I saw Cody come out, and I'm like, that is a horrible neck tattoo. I don't know why it's horrible.
It's grown on me, but when he first got it, I thought it was fake, and then it wasn't fake. So,
right,
yeah.
So,
yeah.
So, okay, here we go. So, who's this sixth guy? And I'm like, okay, like I was expecting, yeah. So no, well, so they were building up. They're like, all right, who's the sixth competitor in the match? And they're like, this is the thing. This is all wrestling. I think this is so goddamn silly. They're like, oh my god, it's Ethan Page, or like, it's like, you literally work there. Like, you know that, like, the commentators, like, you're in the back, you know that Ethan Page is there. I mean, like, why you like, it's just acting like you're all surprised. It's like, you work there. That'd be like me working at my job, and then like we hire a new person, and then like, I'm like, oh my god, it's fucking Kim Jones, like, you know what I mean?
It's Jeff.
It's Jeff.
Jeff's kiss.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Call back.
So I don't know who Ethan Page is. I have no idea who this guy is. So I was kind of like, oh, okay,
that's the big thing about AEW is they're mostly like indie wrestling people who have fell in love with it for the most part. I feel like AEW has brought in a lot of people who are lapsed fans because it has that like old school vibe to it, like the WCW-ish vibe mixed with the modern flair. So I feel like it has an alert because there's a ton of people who hit me up and they're like, I haven't watched wrestling since I was like a kid, but AEW seems awesome. So I started watching it again and stuff like that. But a lot of people like myself, I was stoked because he was kind of one of my guesses. I guessed him or Chris Hero, who was
he was the
Cassius Ono or whatever.
Yeah,
but he was big as Chris. Well, he was big as Chris Hero. Got signed to NXT long time ago, before NXT was a thing. It was still like FCW or something, like Florida Championship Wrestling or whatever the fuck it was before it became NXT proper. Then he got fired from there, got big on the indies again. Then he got signed to NXT when NXT was the thing, and then got fired again. So he's been kind of one where it's everyone's like, when is he going to show up somewhere? So those are my two guesses. So for like any like indie wrestling fan, like Ethan Page is like, oh cool, Ethan Page. It wasn't like a holy shit, it's Ethan Page, but Ethan Page is pretty awesome. He had a big rivalry with Johnny Gargano, I think in Evolve, because he was a big Evolve guy. But Evolve doesn't exist anymore because the owner of Evolve works for WWE now. So
sure, yeah. So I guess and I know that you alluded to earlier in the show, you had said that this pay-per-view had like $7 million worth of revenue towards it. So there was obviously people that were kind of like, oh, I'll check this out. But so like my problem though is like when they see that, like a lot of people, because like there is like this section of fans who know who these guys are, and that's cool. Yeah. I mean, that who all these guys are, so it's really cool for people who know about these different wrestlers. But for me, I'm like, who? like
yeah, I get it,
because I don't know. So it's a tough thing to balance. It's almost like it's weird because it's like with any business, maybe not with AEW, because I know that Tony Khan has like more money than God himself. So like there's like this line of like just kind of doing what you want to do, but also wanting to draw in new people. And so for new people, I mean, I don't know, like even like WWE did it too, like on their own goddamn show where they would bring people from NXT. And I'm like, I don't watch NXT. I don't know who Shinsuke Nakamura. I don't know who this person is, So, and like, they just expect you to know who they are. And I think that wrestling does that, where it's like, you should never expect that anybody knows anything, which I think is kind of turned into a little bit of a wrestling thing, because I think that they've kind of made it like, their own kind of space, which I get to a degree. But for me, who's somebody who's kind of like, yeah, I've always been kind of associated with wrestling my whole life, I just don't know who any of these people are. So it's tough for me to be like excited. So like when people come out and like people are like going nuts in the crowd, I'm like, I'm just not in on the joke here, or I'm just not in what's going on.
Like, bro, you didn't listen to them on Pure Volume? Like, what?
Yeah. Right, exactly. You didn't listen to their first album? What's going on? No, so I noticed because I'll say this too. The commentary team, which I think that I'm glad that AEW put a huge emphasis on that with JR and Tony Schiavone. Those are two great guys. And then
Excalibur is he is the wrestling aficionado. He was a commentary in PWG. Like, he knows everything.
Right, he does. So it's actually kind of funny because before the women's match, he was on there, and I actually had to text somebody who I know who watches AEW. I was like, who's this guy with the mask? Because I didn't know who. He said, oh, he's a luchador. I said, oh, so he used to be a wrestler. And he said, yeah, he used to be once upon a time. I said, okay, that makes sense for the mask. I was like, who? I was like, who is this guy like wearing a mask? Like, I didn't get it. So I knew a little bit more backstory about him. So that was good, because on commentary they kind of harkened back to Cody and Ethan's feud on the indies and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, kind of catching us up a little bit there. That's cool. But then what happens with every ladder match, man, this ruins it for me, because these guys are like only person in the ring. They get to the ladder and then they're like, oh, well, it's like, dude, just goddamn ladder. Like, it's like, you know what I mean? So like, to me, again, these ladder matches, like if I was a guy in a ladder match and it was like a real ladder match, like in terms of like not written for match length or whatever, I'd be like, where's the ladder? I got to try to get up here as fast as I can.
So
like they get up there, they're like reaching with one hand, and it's like, this is so goddamn dramatic. It's like, just get up there and get it. That's just my only thing with ladder matches, and it's happened forever. Like it's just
for sure.
Like, it's like they're the only one. Everybody's dead on the outside of the ring. Like comatose and they're just like drowsy. They can't get up the ladder. So then Jake Roberts comes out and I put in my notes, he looks young and spry, LOL, because that guy looked like he was like borderline dead. I mean, like this guy, I'm like, oh my God, this guy. And then he got like super kicked or whatever. I'm like, oh my God. Like,
yeah, he's done that kind of short room clothesline bit a few times on like active wrestlers and hasn't gotten hit. And then when I saw him get super kicked, I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my God, like he's dead. Somebody check on him.
Yeah, I was like, he took a bomb. Holy fuck.
Yeah, and then I noticed Pentagon kind of did the same thing, like where they, I don't know what it is. I don't know why they do that in ladder matches where it's like they're like alive and then they get over to the ladder and they're like shaking off cobwebs. That to me is goofy. But I got to say, overall, ladder matches are always kind of cool. I mean, there's a lot happening. There's a lot going on.
Of course, yeah.
Of course, I don't know who Scorpio Sky is. So like when he won, I was kind of like, okay, this guy won. I kind of wanted the rapper guy to win just because he kind of stuck out. I kind of wanted him to win because I was like,
that would have been cool. That would have been cool, him versus Darby too. Like, yeah. And again, whoever won, I didn't think it was going to beat Darby. So
yeah, right. Yeah, well, yeah. So that's So that just goes back to my whole thing about what's the point of being the face of the Revolution if they're going to lose. I mean, I don't get that. But
it's fair.
Yeah. So all right, there you go. I'm trying not to be too negative. I'm trying to be positive.
You're being critical. I mean, it seems like you enjoyed most of it so far. Like bits and pieces of it. Like it hasn't been. You haven't regretted watching it. At least I don't think. Maybe you have. But for the most part, it's been like mostly semi-enjoyable. Maybe
we'll get to I'll give you my overview thoughts.
Okay.
I'll give you my. So So go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so before we get to the two like double main events or whatever, Christian Cage comes out and he's the mystery guy that Big Show alluded to, or Paul White alluded to. That's going to be the new signee. A lot of people, for some reason, thought it was like Brock Lesnar or something, which is silly to me to even think that he was signed with AEW or that AEW would sign him.
But yeah,
I mean, it would have been a big move, I guess, but I don't know. I don't know why anyone would have thought that. Like, I think Christian's a pretty cool signing, and they had that kind of face off with him and Kenny Omega. I do hope, though, that if he does get a title shot with Kenny Omega eventually, which I'm fine with, but he's got to win some matches to be able, because the big thing with AEW is like wins and losses matter. Like people get title shot because they're number one in the rankings, or they win like a tournament, or they have some like, oh, here's the rankings. The top, 3 people from the top 5 have a match, and the winner is gets a title shot. Or here's a battle royal, and the winner of the battle royal gets a title shot. There's always like something to determine the number one contender. It's not just like this random guy from wherever is number one contender. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's kind of like a structure. There's meaning to who gets the title shot.
Sure.
So I'm hoping just because he's, Christian, he can just show up and get a title shot. I'm hoping he has to, and his whole thing is outwork everyone. So I'm guessing he will put in the work to get to that level. And the thing is, I don't think Kenny Omega is going to defend his title until the next pay-per-view. Probably he might do it on TV once, but it's like the AEW title getting defended is like a very big deal. So it doesn't happen every week as it shouldn't. He is defending it in April. So there's been like he kind of opened the door to like Impact and AEW crossing over when he won the title, because his manager, Don Callis, is an actual vice president of Impact.
Right.
And he kind of had this thing with Rich Swann, who is the title holder in Impact.
I remember Rich Swann. Yeah.
Yeah. And he just had a match on Saturday, and it was like the old Impact title versus his current title, and the winner is like the unified champion, and he won that. So, and now in April, it's him versus Kenny title for title, which I'm going to bet money that Kenny is going to win, because this whole thing is being a belt collector, and I think it's going to lead him into facing Kota Ibushi for the New Japan title, which their history is longer than almost anyone's. They were rivals. They were tag team partners. They were rivals. They were tag team partners. Like, they've been through it all. So them tying that back together, facing for like a title versus title thing, would be unbelievable. And I think that'll happen eventually. But I do think he's going to end up beating Rich Swann for the title, which will be kind of cool to see him like hopping into other promotions, defending titles here and there, which I think would be really cool. Mm-hmm. Which I kind of love that, again, like I love this like cross promotion, like
and like the New Japan team is now the Impact Tag Team Champions, which is cool too. It's all this crazy, like intersecting gameplay with each other, which I like. So I like the signing. Like I said, everything I remember from a kid was, I always hated Edge and Christian because they always won.
Yeah.
So I always hated them. I was always like, no, the Hardys need to win. And Edge and Christian always won. They always won.
Yeah.
But I mean, the dude's a worker. He's amazing. And he never really got his like last shot to do his thing. And I think WWE missed an insane opportunity to have him involved with this whole WrestleMania build, because Edge is obviously, he won the Royal Rumble. He's going to be in the title match at WrestleMania. Like, to not include him in the story build was in some way, I felt was like a completely wasted opportunity. But I mean, that's on them. And
yeah.
And I'm okay with it because, like I said, like we'll get into the Sting match. Like I feel like AEW's handled Sting very well. So as long as they kind of handle Christian Cage in a kind of similar fashion, where he's kind of like he's a draw to like more casual viewers that might not haven't gotten into AEW. Like, oh, Sting and Christian wrestle AEW now? Cool, I'll go check that out. And I hope it ends up being something cool, because like him versus Kenny Omega can end up being incredible because they're both just amazing at what they do.
Right.
So, but it has to build there. It can't just be like, oh yeah, title match, So I'm holding reservations, but I'm excited about it.
Yeah. So one of my first notes, you'll probably find this funny. When he came out, they said they said it's Christian Cage. I said there's too many pages and cages on this show. There's
far too many pages and cages.
There's too many. I mean, we got to cut down on the pages and cages. We could do mages. Maybe they could just cast fireballs at each other. There you go. Christian Mage. I like that.
Christian Mage. I like that. Yeah.
I like
you
that.
Could be a wizard.
Yeah, pal. Yeah. Write that down.
No. Wizard.
So. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know that Christian was in the Royal Rumble recently, like months ago. But before that, like the guy hasn't wrestled in a long time, I thought.
No, not really. I think he had like one match against Randy Orton.
So how does he outwork everybody if he literally hasn't wrestled in forever?
I mean, I think it's because WWE didn't want him to wrestle for them. I think that's the big thing, because he always wanted like a last run to do his thing, kind of like what Edge is getting right now. But they never let him do it. I don't know why. I have no idea why.
I think that when it comes to Christian and Edge was always the more...
Right, of course.
I mean, he just was. And I think that from stories that I've heard and just listening to, Vince's podcast, stuff like that, because he worked with Christian, obviously in WWE and then in TNA, he said that Christian kind of always had like this kind of ego. Which I guess can kind of be expected because he was with Edge and he probably felt like he was just as qualified as Edge. But for me, I just never got into Christian. There was just something about him that he just kind of felt very middling, like a United States champion, Intercontinental champion kind of guy. Like he just never struck me as like this, like Miro, or like in the case of AEW, like an Adam Page. Like I feel like Adam Page is more of a main eventer than Christian. I mean, in all honesty,
I agree.
Because also Adam Page is like 28, 29 years old, and Christian's like almost 50. So again, it goes back to if he faces Kenny Omega, like I just wish that AEW kind of put their guys, or like a Miro who's still pretty, young and at least to the business anyway. Like kind of elevated those guys more, made their own organic stars. Because I just don't know, man. Like I just don't know if Christian does it, because like I saw him come out and I'm like, oh, like I was just kind of like, he never grabbed me as a kid. Maybe he grabbed other people, growing up, but like he was never. So like again, like if it was like a Brock Lesnar, or like I don't even know who else who's out there, honestly. But like it was like a CM Punk will probably never happen. I only liked CM Punk really because of the straight edge factor, and he had a Killswitch Engage entrance song, by the way. So I liked that a lot. But
for the cult of personality,
right, yeah, which was like I was like he had like the same trajectory as most metalcore bands. He started out as it's kind of interesting. He kind of went radio rock after, but I don't know. When I saw Christian come out, I was just kind of like, oh man, like, because I just feel like they have other guys that are lower on the card right now who I think are more, like just better suited for a man.
I get that criticism. It's just when you said I wish they would build their own stars, it's like I feel like they have, because like Adam Page, they've built him into a star. Darby Allin, they've built into a star. Even like I mean, like Moxley came from WWE, but his character in AEW is nothing like he was in WWE.
I know
that's kind of been like the criticism of AEW is like, oh, they have all these WWE guys at the top, and it's like, I guess, but they're not the same people. Like, I get the Christian stuff, but I think it's them trying to grow and expand to be like, hey, these are some names you remember from when you were a kid. They're wrestling here. They're wrestling here now. And like I said, that's why I have reservation with some of this stuff, because it could end up being like a TNA in the beginning of TNA thing, which is definitely a thing. But they did a thing where Christian became champion, and he was a believable, good champion for TNA. And that was the thing, WB, and that's the reason why I think you don't think he could be that kind of guy, because WB never let him be that guy, which is part of the problem in a way. It's like the same thing with FTR or the Revival. Like, you were like, oh, these guys are losers, and it's like, if anyone watched them NXT, they're like, no, this tag team is better than any tag team on the fucking roster, and WWE just wastes them. So a part of it is like perspective in a way of they've been presented to you,
right?
That's why I'm excited about it, because they could use him to full advantage, and I think he'll kind of be like a stepping stone to help build people, because that's like what Cody did with Darby. Because obviously Cody's a well name. He is nothing like he was. Like, he was pretty much a loser at WWE, like straight up, and he left WWE and became the star of every promotion he ended up joining. Like, he was the guy to go. He's the reason anyone can leave WWE and be successful now, because anyone who left before, they kind of just, fizzled out. They might have had like a little stroke in TNA or done some few weird indie dates, and they kind of fizzled out. But Cody came out and was like, I am in every major wrestling promotion that isn't WWE. I'm a big deal. He won championships. He was in every big pay-per-view. Like, it was the same year he was in like WrestleMania, Wrestle Kingdom, the big TNA one, Battle of Los Angeles, which is the biggest tournament for PWG. He was in like every major wrestling event there was that year.
Okay.
He became the guy, like, pretty much overnight. Drew McIntyre actually did. He kind of did it a little more, because he left. He became TNA champion. He became Evolve champion, and then they brought him back into NXT. Became NXT champion. Then obviously he was WWE champion. He was like the reverse kind of thing. So he did a little bit too. Cody kind of brought it to the next level, because he was Ring of Honor champion. He had like a really big match in the TNA thing. I think he defended the Ring of Honor title at New Japan, or he faced for another title in New Japan. I don't remember. And stuff like that. So it's like, I get they're the same people, but they're the characters they should have been in WWE. Because obviously Dean Ambrose was a huge part. He was multi-time champion. He won every fucking title there was. But even then, compared to how he's viewed now, he just won Best Wrestler for Pro Wrestling Insider. He won some other Best Wrestler thing for last year and everything. Ever since he showed up, it's been like, oh, okay, this is how he should have been viewed from the jump. In WWE as Dean Ambrose. So it's like, I kind of hate those criticisms, being like, oh, they're all WWE guys. And it's like, okay, all of WWE is they're all indie guys. It's like, it's such a stupid argument to me, because it's like, if you look down the card of like Daniel Bryan, indie guy, CM Punk was an indie guy. Like, all these guys were indie guys. Like, they all started from somewhere. So to be like, oh, they're that kind of guy. The legend thing's completely different, for sure. Because, like, obviously Christian was a staple in the rise of WWE in like the 90s and shit like that. And even the Big Show, like, the Big Show was a huge WCW guy, but he's not really like a main focus. And the Sting thing was kind of like an isolated incident, because he was obviously a WCW guy that WWE eventually brought him in, but they brought him in and then had him lose to Triple H. Like, who the fuck does that? Why would you do that? Like, why does Triple H need to beat Sting? Like, they're both like 40 years old. That match was whatever. But then they had a match like they did tonight, where it's like they used it to his strengths. They made a cinematic match where, he doesn't have to take crazy bumps. He's not going to get hurt. They can make it look as good as they want it to. And it's like, it looked like a mini action movie. It was like, I would kind of jump in the gun going into that match, but it's like I feel like, it's like you said, like, AEW is like, they're doing the thing, trying to elevate their younger kids. Like, even Jungle Boy. I don't know if you might have signed Jungle Boy on Dynamite, but he's he's been like, he was like basically a nobody, and he came on TV, and he's the son of a famous actor, but he didn't use that to his advantage, which I think is really cool of him. He like went under Jungle Boy because he didn't want to get special attention because of his dad, which is I think is very admirable and cool. But now it's kind of like, oh, he's on TV and people acknowledge it and he doesn't care anymore because obviously like he did not use that to like gain an advantage in the business and everything like that, which is very respectable. But like even people like him, it's like people, they come out and they're chanting his theme music and shit like that. You know, it's like even MJF was known to some indie people, but like AEW elevated him to the stratosphere of being the biggest bad guy on TV when it comes to wrestling. You know what I mean? He's like the most like you love to hate him, you know? Like,
yeah. And I guess, I don't know. I guess like when I think of like a star in wrestling, I guess it kind of comes down to scaling, I guess, in terms of, cause I mean, let's face it. I mean, like wrestling is ratings wise at the lowest point it's ever been. I know that there's obviously more variety out there for people to consume, but like
way more.
And I guess I look at it like this. Like I remember listening to a Ryback podcast, and I know a lot of people didn't really like Ryback, but he said that Triple H said to him that they were not going to build any more stars to be bigger than the company. You know, like a Rock or a Cena or anybody like that. Like those are like stars that kind of exceed the glass ceiling, so to speak. Oh, yeah. I think that there are guys who have star caliber. It's just how they get presented on TV is what holds them back. So like for me, when I watch AEW, like the guys to me, I'm like, oh shit. Like if they were presented, you know, in a different way, or like the writing towards them was, you know, better, I guess. Like MJF is somebody I'm like, okay, this guy could be like a star. Like Adam Page, this guy could be a star. Like, I guess like when somebody says like, oh, Orange Cassidy's a star, I'm like, to who? Like, I just like that to me, I don't get personally. Cause I'm like, he could walk to my front door and I'd have no idea who he is. Like, so like to me, like I know of like an MJF, I know of an Adam Page, even before watching AEW. Like I've heard the name Orange Cassidy, of course, because I know that you know he gets a lot of hype, you know, with you know, like on the internet and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I guess to me, I guess it's just all about scale when it comes to what defines a star. Because I think that there are people who could be stars, but there's just, you know, there's a limitation on them, whether it's just writing or whatever. Because like Bray Wyatt, I think could be a star, but like a lot of it's just goofy shit that gets written for him, or you know, so like I don't know. I guess like when I hear people talk, I guess at the end of the day, what I think is like, I think the term star gets thrown around a lot when it comes to certain wrestlers, in my opinion.
I guess to me, it's hard because there's not like a full crowd, but if like Orange Cassidy or like, to me, like a star, you come out and you're like over, whether you're booed or cheered, like that's what kind of makes you a star in a way. Because when crowds were there, like Darby would come out, people would lose their fucking mind. And like people are painting their face like Darby, wearing the face mask. Like, and the same thing with Orange Cassidy, like little kids are dressing up in fucking full denim tuxedos and shit like that. Like to me, that's like, that would generate like a star to me. You know what I mean? Like, and those are like homegrown, like they were around before AEW, but they were kind of like, I knew who Darby Allin was, and it was mostly because there was like a viral clip of him getting thrown into a pole in the middle of a fucking wrestling venue. And I was like, oh, that dude's a psychopath. He just let someone throw him into a pole in the middle of the room. You know, but other than that, like I didn't really know anything about him at all until he came in here, and I'm like, oh, okay, like he just kind of blew up in a way because people like gravitated to him. It's kind of the same thing, you know. It's like there may not be like in the main event. Well, I mean, Darby kind of is because he's a champion and stuff like that. But as far as like Hangman Page, it's like Hangman Page though. That's the long game with him, because I think he's going to be the one who ends up dethroning Kenny eventually. That's what the story would make sense to me. Like he's the one who finally takes down the big bad guy Kenny eventually. But I don't want it to happen super soon because I want the payoff to be good, you know what I mean? And there's obviously other shit going on, like Kenny's kind of doing this like belt mission where he wants to travel everywhere and take all the belts, and he's showing up in Impact and he has the thing with the Good Brothers, and it's like, are they the Bullet Club? Are they not the Bullet Club? Like, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered before they kind of get to that resolution, which I hope do get answered along the way.
Sure.
And that's a part of like the storytelling thing. It's like, I don't like things super rushed, and that's like WB is like very key for that. Like they like rush things, but also drag them out too long.
Right.
And AEW's done a pretty good job with pacing of story. Sometimes things have been rushed in a way, and the payoff's kind of weird. But when they get payoffs right, the payoffs are very, very good. So I guess that's like my thoughts on like the whole star and storytelling thing in a way. Because like, and I think a big part of it is with crowds. Like, because if there was like a crowd and Hangman Page came out, people would be fucking.
Well, see,
Hangman. You know what I mean?
I get what you're saying.
So it's hard.
I get what you're saying about the crowd. But at the same time, I guess I just kind of view it as those people are going there because they're obviously into it. I guess like when you look at, I mean, listen, I know that AEW's carved out a nice niche for themselves, but they've lost over half of their viewership from episode 1 of the show till now. I know that they were like over 1 million viewers, and then that's gone down. I mean, of course, it's going to be, it's like that with anything, of course. Like it should grow. But it has gone down. And I guess like I just kind of think of it in terms of going back to music. Like to me, Frankie Palmieri of Amira is a star to me. But in the grand scheme of music, he's not. So that's like kind of like that's kind of like the way that I've kind of viewed it. So it's interesting. It's a very interesting conversation to be had, because it's interesting. Like wrestling is so interesting in that with crowds, everybody's going to appear to be like over to the moon, because everybody is there because they're part of this like more niche group than ever kind of thing. So it's an interesting conversation to be had, though. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's hard with the ratings things, because I mean the Shaq episode did 934,000, close to 1 million, and they kind of teeter in the like 600, but more closer to the 800. They've kind of stayed consistent more than anything over the last like number of months. It's kind of always been in that same, but they haven't really grown. But then the Shaq thing kind of boosted them up a little bit. Obviously their debut one's kind of hard to beat. A debut episode of anything is kind of hard to beat, unless it's like a series finale or something. They've stayed consistent, but that's like, it goes back to like the Christians of the things and the Stings of the things. It's like, I think those are the things they're trying to balance, building up their people and to like bring in some people that can bring in new people. It's because obviously they have a very built-in fan base. Like they have a very loyal fan base, and they kind of need to do like, but then people will criticize me either way. That's wrestling Twitter too. It's any fandom, any fandom at all. It's you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like they're going to be criticized either way.
I guess
so it is what it is.
I guess I would just love to see a world where we get back to wrestling having 8 million people watching it every week, and I just don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't know.
Definitely not. I don't think anything is bringing 8 million people unless it's like the Super Bowl or something, or some big event.
There's some like weird shows that like the Masked Dancer gets like 5. I'm like, who's watching this? Like who's
a lot of people.
Yeah, but like, it's like I've never met anybody who was like, dude, I can't hang out tonight. I got to go watch the Masked Dancer, And it's just,
my wife's brother watches it. We watched it when it first came out, and then I got bored of it.
You see, okay, so so it's just interesting, man, because it's just like wrestling is so, it's unlike anything else in that there's people who like still cling on to this hope, and like some people watch wrestling out of habit at this point, not even because they like it, but because they just want something to like complain about almost.
That's true. Yeah, I feel like I'm in the minority. I watch it and I actually enjoy it for the most part. Obviously, I'm critical of some things, or some things I'm like, that was whatever. But that's the only reason I only watch AEW is because I actually enjoy watching it, and especially on TV. Like TV, they're like, it's just like bam, 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 it's over. You know what I mean? You're like, oh fuck, it's over. Okay, you don't even feel like you were watching for 2 hours half the time. You're like, okay, it's over, cool. Next week, I guess. But yeah, like so many of my friends still watch WWE and they complain about it. I'm like, why do you watch this? I was like, that's why I stopped watching it, because I didn't like it anymore. Like,
you're right. It's like if I turned on any show on Netflix right now, if I watch through 2 episodes, and it's not like I'm going to keep watching it because I don't like it, but wrestling has that phenomenal.
It does.
It's so
like that's the. I think I was saying this earlier. The difference between WWE is like most people at WWE, it's like a habit thing. In AEW, there might be a habit thing too, but it's like most people watch it because they like it. And it's like that's like the big difference. It's like there's no real hardcore fans with WWE, and they don't try to cater to the hardcore fans. They cater to the casual audience. That's all they give a fuck about. And I think that's the big difference. And I think that's what might end up breaking them or making them change their format eventually, because they're going to realize that they'll eventually lose them to something else. I think. I could be wrong, but it's like, it's like they don't care about the hardcore fans, which is insane. You should kind of try to cater to both. And that's what I think AEW is trying to do. I don't know if they're fully succeeding at it yet, but they're trying to like build these new people, and they have their like kind of more known people, and then bring in other known people to kind of bring new people in, and then have them fall in love with the Jungle Boys, the Darby Allins, or even the Young Bucks. They know who the Young Bucks are, or whoever, like they're trying to bring them into it and be like, oh, okay, these guys are awesome. I love this, keep watching it. I think that's what they're trying to do, but it's like a weird line to watch, because again, you're going to get eaten alive no matter what way you do it. They're like, oh, they brought in Christian. Whoa, what the fuck? They're TNA with more money, and like it's like I'm like, oh my god, can you guys just like I get being critical, like I get that, but like complaining about every single thing is just insane to me.
Right. So that exactly no, and so like it's weird because like with AEW, they've kind of gone down the the hardcore fan route, which I respect. I mean, they're kind of living in their realm. And with WWE, it's so weird. Like they're in this purgatory of like,
oh, wild.
It's like, okay, we're gonna try to cater a little bit, like have like the matches and stuff like that. But then they're like, we want to appeal to casual fans, but it's like literally the worst television show on like literally like Crisley Knows Best is better television than Monday Night Raw. I mean, it seriously is. I mean, like it's just they're in like this weird purgatory where it's almost like they either need to get somebody in there who's like a good ass writer, like that can get characters, develop characters, make a compelling story. They either need to do that, or they need to just go at a full on hardcore fan route to at least have a dedicated fan base. But they live in this purgatory where they have the Bruce Pritchards of the world coming in and out, and it's like these guys are like they didn't do anything 20 years ago, and you're going to bring them back in. It makes no sense to me how they want to bring in people who have literally never attributed to a good rating in wrestling to turn the ship around. It's so odd to me. So getting back to AEW, I've noticed that obviously Tony Khan is a through and through wrestling fan, which is very evident. So like I know that he's kind of going down that rabbit hole, but while also kind of integrating, some guys here and there. So I'm like, we'll get to my full thoughts on AEW, so I don't want to spoil it, but I respect that, even though I think, it's like, hey, Tony Khan, the Jaguars were 1-15 last year. Just want to point that out. So okay, well, I'll stop there, though. We can go on to the next match. We can go on to, I'm sorry.
It's all right. It happens. So the next match is the street fight, Sting and Darby Allin versus Brian Cage and Ricky Starks. This match, to me, I loved it. It was like watching a video game in live action, pretty much. The intro was sick with fucking Darby and Sting coming in with all the hooded figures and the masks, and then even when they got started, like Brian Cage is holding Darby in a suplex, walking up 2 flights of stairs. Darby's jumping off fucking 2-story roofs. They're throwing him through glass. Like, it was just insanity. I don't know. I don't know how you felt about this, but cinematic matches can be very bad. I've seen bad cinematic matches for sure. And I've seen ones that I was like, okay, that was pretty okay. But this one, I felt like it flowed nice. It was filmed beautifully.
Yeah.
And just even Sting throwing the bat up and then Darby throwing it back to him later on and stuff like that. It all connected and everything like that. It made Sting look like the icon he is. You know what I mean? Which is awesome. And I feel like that's what WWE failed at. You know what I mean? You literally bring this guy in this huge angle in WWE, and then you set up this WrestleMania match, and then you have him lose to Triple H. Fuck off. Triple H does not need to win anymore, ever again. They just won everything. Like, he won the company. Like, he runs NXT. It's like, that's his company pretty much. Like, fuck, dude. He does not need to win anything else. Like, we get it. You're trying to put the nail in the coffin of WCW. What the fuck ever. But like, fuck, man.
Yeah,
you know, it's like
annoying.
This match, it still made Brian Cage, Ricky Starks look awesome because they you know, they got their shit in too. Like, they fucking beat the fuck out of Darby and Sting, you know, and at the end of the day, obviously Sting's gonna win. Like, I mean, I kind of saw that coming, but he should win. Like, that does not bother me. And the journey to it was just awesome. Like, just everything involved. Like, that jump Darby took at the end. This dude is crazy. Like, he's just crazy. He does not give a fuck.
He's a hoodlum. Please,
he is a hoodlum.
I want you to refer to him as that from now on. I don't want you to say. I don't want you to say he's crazy, or I want you to say he's a hoodlum. Okay,
he is a hoodlum. Yeah, and that jump was awesome. It looked fucking sick. Like, it was just sick. It was awesome. Like, it was cool. Like, this match to me was just, I don't know. Like, I guess I can see why some people wouldn't like it, I guess. But to me, it's just like, as a wrestling fan and a fan of, like, you know, music videos and movies and TV, it's like the perfect combination of both smashed into one. You know, it's just like, people throwing each other through glass, and there's wrestling, and there's a ring too. Cool.
Before I get into my analysis, if you will, where did the hoodlum moniker come? Because that is horrible. I just want to point that out. But where did that?
There was like a weird promo where I think it was in the same location that Darby just said we're hoodlums. I don't know. It was weird. I don't really understand that either.
I was like, that's kind of a weird one. But I was like, one of my notes was. If only they ran into a local metalcore band also filming a music video at the same time, because it was like a perfect location.
That is a prime location for a music video shot. You're
right. So I will say this: I dig this cinematic match style. I think it's cool. The build up to it was cool. I enjoyed this. The only thing though, which I saw this and I was like, why did they do this? I remember it. They have, I think it was Sting walking up and the camera's on him and then it pans and then there's a wrestling ring. I'm like, why is there a ring in the middle of a warehouse? Why is that there? Like, why?
It's kind of the crutch of cinematic matches, because the cinematic match started with Matt Hardy. He did this broken Matt Hardy universe thing in Impact, and actually it started in a match, but he pinned Jeff Hardy outside of the ring. It was like a false count anywhere thing. So that is a silly trope. Like, there was an Undertaker and AJ Styles one. There also wasn't a ring in that one either. So it's like this weird thing where it's like, does there really need to be a ring? Can't they just pin it around?
Exactly. I was like, why is there? It would almost. I mean, again, Tony Khan has a ton of money. Like, they could have like closed down like a street and like had them like fighting each other off a CVS window or something like that.
There was a parking lot fight they did with, it was actually Chuck Taylor and his partner who's injured now, Trent, versus Santana Ortiz, and it was sick. Like, they fucked each other up, like literally like smashed each other through cars and shit. That was cool. But I get like I like the warehouse vibe because they can keep it contained, you know. But an actual street fight would be kind of cool. They actually. Another main event, they did a False Count Anywhere tag match, and they went in the back in the kitchen, like people got hit in the head with potatoes, actual potatoes and shit. I was like, this is insane. Like, I love this. But the ring thing, the only thing I get it is like the ending made sense where they kind of did the spot, you know, with like the stinger splash and everything, but like it kind of really didn't need it. I agree there.
Yeah, it was just so. I don't want to say it took me out of it, because I like the match, because I always love like those old hardcore matches where like they pinned him in the ball pit and stuff. I just love it. It was just so funny. I just love, like, I remember there was like that one with Spike Dudley. No, it wasn't Spike Dudley. It was another really small guy, and he walks into the arcade and he goes, "Hey, have you seen a guy wearing a belt around here?" Like, "Oh yeah, he's upstairs." Like, I just thought that was so I can't remember who it was exactly, but no, man, I love the cinematic match style. I thought the warehouse vibe was cool. I thought that, they made a lot of really cool uses out of their surroundings. I just really didn't. I don't know why the ring was there. I thought that was
fair. That's a fair judgment. Yeah.
But other than that, I thought it was a cool like kind of thing. I was like almost surprised. I was like, oh wow, like I didn't know AEW was going to do this style of match.
So they did another cinematic match called the Stadium Stampede match, and it was like Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Hangman, and Matt Hardy versus the Inner Circle, and they literally fight in the fucking football field. And it's like a half an hour long, but it is insane. It's all just like crazy shit. Like they do anything you can think of in that stadium. It's so cool. I would definitely look that one up to watch it because it is fucking awesome.
I'd almost wish that every match was this way. In all honesty, like cinematic like this, or just literally don't give anybody a script and don't let anybody know what's going on. Just make it as reality based as you can, like react on the fly kind of thing. Right. I think these cinematic matches, I know that wrestling purists are like, they're not in the goddamn ring and the squared circle, although there was a squared circle in this one. But I just, when I saw the ring, I was like, God damn it. Because this was good. This was so cool. Other than that, I thought this was cool. I liked it. I love Sting. I mean, who doesn't love Sting that's, 25 years old or older? You know?
Right, exactly.
I love Sting. I think Darby Allin being a hoodlum is kind of silly, but I was really here. I was really in this for Sting. I was in this for Sting. Match was shot cool. Obviously, like the videography was sick. I'd love whoever shot the video to shoot my next music video. In all honesty,
dude, for real, right?
Yeah, right. I just the ring and those types of matches you just can't have. Like, I just get away from the ring. Yeah,
that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. Okay, so on the main event. Kenny Omega, the champion, versus Jon Moxley. Exploding barbed wire death match. So obviously you've seen it from the video package. Their rivalry has started from the beginning of AEW, pretty much.
Right.
He showed up, attacked Kenny Omega. They had this crazy hardcore match. I think it was. I know it wasn't Revolution. It was something else. But they had they murdered each other in this hardcore match. So. The fact that this is like they had to bring it to the next level makes sense because it's like Jon Moxley beat him in the hardcore match. Kenny Omega beat him in their normal match. So, hey, let's settle the rubber match in this crazy fucking thing.
I hate to interrupt you, but I just wanted to, one thing you said there that I just wanted to so if that's because Kenny Omega picked this match, correct? He picked this. So why would he pick this match if he lost to him in a hardcore match?
He wanted to beat him at his own. He wanted to beat him at his own game.
Ah, I see. Okay. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah. No, you're fine. And he comes from like DDT before like New Japan, and he did a lot. DDT is like known for really weird, wild, wacky matches. So
was that like the naked guy like the naked wrestler poster that I saw floating around the internet?
Probably.
Yeah. There's something or something. Yeah.
He's wrestled like a 9-year-old girl in it and shit like that, which is actually a pretty entertaining match, to be honest. He wrestled like an inflatable doll, which is also entertaining. Like crazy shit they do over there. It's nuts. But anyway, so that's why it's like they need to bring this to the next level. Now, the match itself, I thought was awesome. Like even when they hit the ropes, the explosions, like because I was wondering how it would really look. And I'm not like a big deathmatch guy. I'm kind of like, I was never really into the deathmatch thing. They're almost like a little too much. But I've seen the AEW kind of, I see for anyone who doesn't like, for anyone who doesn't like hardcore matches, they're like, this is too much, which I get. There's barbed wire, there's always blood. Like, I get it if you're not into it. So they do like a crazy match, but it's not like as crazy as the ones they've done before. So I thought like the exploding barbed wire looked cool. The spots in it were awesome. Like the spot with the exploding bat and everything was pretty crazy. So I thought the match was really, really brutal. Like super. I want to hear your thoughts on the match itself first before we get into the ending. Because those are, to me, I'm treating them as two separate things.
Sure.
Though after Dynamite, my opinion changed on it quite a bit, I think. But I just thought the match was super brutal. Like it's like this is their third meeting. It's the rubber match to like end the feud pretty much. And it's obviously been a very heated rivalry throughout over a year or however long it's been. And, this is the blow-off match to kind of settle things out. And again, I did not think Moxley was going to win, but I knew this match was going to be insane because their hardcore match was wild. So I knew they kind of needed to bring it to the next level, which I think they did. It was a pretty crazy match. Like they were super smart about. I didn't know they paid homage to former death matches, but me watching some like listening to some podcasts are like, oh yeah, this was like an homage to this and this and this, which I was like, oh, that's really cool that they're, you know, paying tribute to what, you know, made this match possible in the first place, you know, while still adding to their story and keeping it rolling. So I thought it was like a really good match, and the ending with the one winged angel through a fucking chair looked insane. Like, so
yeah,
it was cool. And also the kick out. So the big thing is like no one's kicked out of the one winged angel. It's like the most protected finisher ever. Actually, the only person who's kicked out of it is Kota Ibushi, which I think, again, storytelling and building to when that eventually happens. But the way that he kicked the exploding barbed wire to make him like get rid of the pin, I thought was genius. Like, obviously he didn't kick out of it, but he did what he had to, like, you know, like almost like putting your foot on the rope, but it's an exploding fucking rope. So he triggered it to, you know, make him get out of the pin. I thought that was like insanely smart and a really cool way of getting around kicking out of that move. Because that happened, I was like, oh, the match is over. I was like, I can't believe this match is over already, but it's over. And then he did that. I was like, oh, wow, that was super smart. So let me hear your thoughts on this, baby.
Okay, so yeah, so like with some people, like when I see like these like really just crazy hardcore, I don't know, something about them is almost like it's just it kind of teeters on too much, only because it's like I don't want to see anybody get hurt, like for real, you know, like I don't want to see that happen. So no, I thought that the content of the match itself was pretty interesting. Like you said, like when I saw that he put his foot on the rope to kind of make it explode to kind of get the pin. I thought that was kind of cool, using, the resources around you, I thought that was cool. There was some cool spot. I mean, like there was like that one where they went out on the table. I was like, oh God, like it just hurt me.
The exploding platform with the barbed wire.
Yeah. Like a lot of it, like, hurt me.
Like even Moxley going in the corner and like ripping the shirt off of himself to get out of it and shit. I was like, fuck. Dude, in the hardcore match, they brought out a bed of barbed wire and they suplexed, or I think Moxley suplexed Kenny Omega into it. So they're both stuck in this bed of barbed wire. It was fucking crazy. I was like, no.
Yeah. Oh man. It was so overall, like the match to me, like for like the content of it, it was cool. Like it was like it's not something you see every day. It was like a hardcore match turned up, but not so much that it's like, oh, like a Tommy Dreamer hardcore match or something like that,
Yeah.
But I was kind of like, there was some moments I was like, oh my God, I don't want anybody to get actually hurt. Like that's, I don't.
Yeah.
So, but now, here are some of like the nuances of the match that I think are just so wrestling-y that it's like I just wish that some of these things were eliminated. Number one, a pin for this match. Why are you pinning somebody? Like this should be like an I quit or like a last man standing format, in my opinion. Because it's almost like a I don't know why, but like it's almost like pinning somebody, like with everything happening, kind of undercuts it a little bit for me, because I feel like it should just be more of like an intense like bout of like a feat of strength kind of thing. Like like you can't get up after 10 seconds through all this, because like I don't know, there's something about like going through barbed wire and then kicking out at 2. It just kind of doesn't add up totally for me.
I can see. I think my only thing against that, if it was an I quit match, I don't think any of them would either of them would quit, and I feel like it could go way too far with an I quit match.
Right. So that's why I kind of
for the last man standing. I feel like it would just take some of the kind of like urgency away from it. I guess. Like I get your point, but I feel like it would, because like a 3 is that's faster than 10, obviously. So it's like if you're waiting for 10 and they get up at 9, you're like, okay, we gotta go through another 10 count. You like that's last man standings can be like very drawn out. You know what I mean? So I feel like it would kind of risk that in a way, because it would feel, because there's so many like.
But at the same time, you could
9. They got up. Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you could write it in a way to where it's like maybe you get to like the 9 count once. The other ones I don't know. It's because like. I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, it's just kind of like it was interesting to me. I mean, maybe I'm kind of like I don't know. There's something about like this just the pin with like this mountain of barbed wire all around him. That's just kind of like interesting. But the other thing that I never understand about like the matches where like it's, you know, obviously no disqualification. It's like if there can be interference, why doesn't that happen more readily? Like it seems to only happen at certain points, but it's like if I was a heel and like there could be interference, I would like be like the people in the back. I'd be like, all right, listen, if like I want you to come out and like help me out or that kind of thing. So I get it for like the integrity of the match or whatever, but I think
that was their, like, to me, like, Moxley is kind of a loner, obviously. They've kind of painted him as like he does this shit by himself. So anyone coming out for him doesn't really make sense, obviously. For Kenny, I think it was like, hey, the exploding bat is like his secret weapon. When it gets to this point, you guys come out. You know, it's like his plan B. It's like, yo, I've beat this guy before. I don't need you, but if this goes down badly, come out and save my ass, kind of thing. You know, and that's why they kind of, and Moxley obviously kind of gets the better with him until he gets smashed in the face with an exploding bat. That's gonna fucking that's gonna slow your roll a little bit, but you know, it's like it's like two, like without them coming out, Omega might not have won. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like the part. He's like, you know, he's supposed to be the best wrestler in the world, but he's kind of, you know, resorting to these heel tactics to win. Right. It's like anything I need to do to win. I don't care if I cheat or whatever, because he won the title by hitting him with a microphone in the head and then hitting a one-wing angel. You know what I mean? So he even cheated to win the title, and like that's been kind of a part of like the whole thing. He's like, I don't care. I won. I don't care how I won. I won. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that was kind of like that was kind of, and then I know you just mentioned that Moxley's kind of like a loner, so that probably kind of defeats my next point here, because I saw, you know, obviously the countdown to the explosion. I was like, there's not one person in the back who wants to try to save this guy, like at all, like not one. So that's because I don't know kind of the backstory with all the characters and whatnot. So because like that's always kind of like my thing when I see that in wrestling, where it's like this person will die if no one saves them, and like at like 3 seconds left, somebody's just scampering down the aisle. So like when I saw that, I'm like, oh, does Moxley not have like one friend who can get in there and save him? And then Eddie Kingston, you know, comes in obviously and he like covers him up because he couldn't get him out of the ring, I guess. And then I'll let you take it away from there.
So a big thing with the Moxley thing, which I think you might, and the Kingston thing, which I think you might have gotten from watching that and Dynamite, is that they go way back. They had a huge feud in AEW. Right. That Moxley was kind of like, hey man, you're my friend. You don't need to be like this. Like, you don't need to, like, let's still be friends. And he's like, no. And it actually ended in an I Quit match where he made Eddie Kingston quit and everything like that. Sure. So they have a very history backstory, which the promos and that feud were ungodly. They were so fucking good.
Okay.
So him coming to save him is being like, I need to come save my friend. Like, I don't care what's happened before. He is my friend. I'm coming to save him, which I thought was really cool. And actually, there's like a big famous exploding barbed wire death match where he does the same thing. Like, he beats the fuck out of him and he knows it's going to explode at the end. And he leaves him out to you know, die, explode. But then at the last second, he runs back and realizes I can't let him go out like this. And he does it. So it was a good way to like twist it to be like, oh, it makes more sense for Eddie Kingston to come like save his long lost friend rather than Omega to be like, oh, I'm not an evil guy. I'm going to come save him. You know, like it made more sense. And I was like, oh my God, Eddie came out. I was like, this is so cool. I was like, this is such good storytelling.
Okay, that explains more. Yeah.
And then the 4th of July sparklers go off and that's it.
Yeah, and see, that's the problem with these types of matches. We've seen it a lot in the history of whether it's like the electric cage or the dogs from hell, the kennel from hell or whatever. These types of matches, man, are so like, if it doesn't go off without a hoot, like it's bad. And like we saw it, because I saw that and I was like, because when I was watching it, I didn't know that people were also like, what the fuck was that? Because I was like, what happened?
Yeah, because I went over to my friends, like he invites me and a few friends over for like all of the AEW groups now. It's become a ritual, you know.
Cool.
And it happened and we're all like, wait.
Yeah, it's like Something had to have gone wrong here, right?
I don't know what actually happened, like if it was a malfunction or whatever. I do like the way they kind of poked fun at it on Wednesday and everything like that. Like, Kenny being like, like the the explosion not heard around the world, and saying, if it went either way, it's cool. It's like we made them look like idiots or we killed them. Like, either way, cool with me. And in the Eddie Kingston and Moxley promo was super cool, being like, they kind of explained why he like passed out in front of him, because everyone's like, Eddie, nothing happened. Like, why are you? And I like how he's like, it's like the time where I thought I was in prison. I was like, okay, like I believe you. I can take that seriously. That's fine. And him just saying the best line ever was Kingston going, "Oh, Impact must have paid for the explosive."
Right.
And Moxley going, "Yeah, that makes sense." Like, that line alone made it up for me. I was like, all right, you guys win. Cool. And then Kenny coming out and making fun of him, and him laying on the ground they put the countdown back up for Eddie Kingston. He's like, 69 me, Don. And like, they're like making fun of each other. Like, I thought it was funny. Like, I liked how they poked fun at themselves, because they knew it. Like, and that's the thing that sucks. It's wrestling. There's so many variables that can go wrong at any given moment. You know what I mean? It's like, it has to be one of the hardest things to pull off, like, in the world. And obviously shit goes wrong. We've seen shit go wrong. We've seen shit go wrong way worse, ending up in death on TV. Like, shit has gone very badly in wrestling. Yeah. And it's very possible for anything to happen. It's just, the big thing is, I enjoyed the pay-per-view for the most part. I thought it was pretty good. And I had fun watching it and everything. And then, like, obviously everyone's just going to remember that. But I do think they did a good job of like addressing it and bringing forward to it. Obviously, there's a ton of AEW haters that are just gonna be like, they suck. Look, they fucked up the explosion, whatever, and not take any context to like, oh, the match was actually really good beforehand, and oh, hey, look, they even addressed it and they made fun of themselves. Like, like, they're not like being like, oh yeah, just whatever. Like, no, they addressed it, and they're moving on with it. And
they only remember the finish, pal. Yeah, pal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of true. I mean, people really only do kind of remember the finish. I think for me, and kind of like my first AEW viewing experience, listen, man, I get obviously why. I see the appeal if you're like a wrestling fan. Like, I get the appeal. I just don't. I guess I'm just not a wrestling fan in this form. It's just so different from what and I guess a part of it is nostalgia, right? Like, I mean, like, I kind of remember wrestling in a certain way, and like, I'll watch back old episodes, and like, I'll channel those same feelings towards it then. But just with this, man, I guess, like, so just kind of a quick wrap up. I didn't really get anything out of the Young Bucks and Chris Jericho MJF match. I didn't really get anything out of that. The casino match, I didn't really get too much out of that, other than like, oh, Phoenix kind of reminds me of Rey Mysterio. The women's title match, I was like, I'll just not even factor that into anything, because I don't think anybody enjoyed that. Miro, it's cool to see Russo, because I think Rusev's cool. But again, it's just like, I guess just overall, there's some guys who I can identify as like, oh, like these guys are kind of like, I can kind of see them, being stars in terms of like, they have like the capability or whatever. But I guess just in my first AEW viewing experience, I was kind of going into Dynamite like the pay-per-view didn't really sell me on this, but it'll be interesting to see how they follow it up.
What did you think after the Dynamite then?
I didn't like the Dynamite either. To me, it's just a lot of wrestling. There's just so much wrestling and I know that, like, obviously it's a wrestling show, and I get that, but to me, there's just so much of it that it just kind of, it's like, for a new viewer where I'm not necessarily going into this knowing the characters, everything is so long. Like, I just feel like everything's just so kind of like, the matches are just so much longer than I feel like they need to be, especially for like the moves that are performed in the matches. Like, getting kicked in the head should like be a 3 count to me. Or like, just for example, like Phoenix and versus one. I can't remember which Young Buck it was. I don't understand those types of matches where it's like, you guys are going to face each other for the title, so we're going to have a one-on-one singles match. I mean, I guess I get it to an extent. You want to see how they test their strength against each other or whatever. But so then, you go from there. They're telling you what's coming up for the night. I think that's kind of cool to kind of prepare the viewers for what's coming, because I think sometimes what will happen in wrestling is they won't tell you that something cool is happening, and then people tune out before the cool thing even happens. The pre-tape with Moxley and Eddie Kingston, it was just like, so it was just a few days later, and I thought that both of the guys died. That's how they kind of like build it. Obviously, like the explosion didn't exactly explode, but these guys seemed like kind of like okay after that. So I guess just overall, it was just like I don't know. Let me see here. Cody Rhodes versus Seth Gargis. I was like, I don't know what. I was like, it's just a jobber match.
It was just a jobber match.
Yeah, just a jobber match. I don't know, man. It just didn't really. Nothing captivated me enough to want to come back. Again, there's some players who I thought were like I know that I hear this on these wrestling podcasts all the time, what Dutch Mantel used to call certain talent a good little hand. Like there's some guys who I see as like, okay, like I can appreciate them, but there's just not enough to make me want to watch, just because I think a lot of it is just so wrestling heavy, and I just prefer the story that goes with it. And then like, there's just the match times are very long for me, and that's where it kind of kills it for me. Yeah. Do you hate me now?
Fair enough. No, I don't hate you now.
Okay.
My wife hates wrestling. She thinks it's the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't know why you watch this, but whatever.
Yeah. It's one of those things that it's like, I'm never going to like make fun of anybody for like, it's just, who, it's not like that or anything. It's just not for me. I guess it's just,
that's fair.
It's just so far away from what I originally liked wrestling for, that it's like, I don't know, in the wrestling's one of those things, man. It's tough. It's almost like once you come to realize that it's like not like when you're a kid, you're like, oh my God, like, and then you find out it's, not real, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like it's predetermined. It loses its flair. And then I think it's like when you become older, and as an adult, you have to kind of gear your interest for wrestling a different way. And the way that you're supposed to gear it towards just isn't something that I'm interested in. Does that make sense? Does that make
sense? It's totally fair. Like obviously I love like Marvel and DC movies. There's a lot of people who don't like those movies either, and I'm not like, oh, you're missing out. Like only if they're like, hey, like why do you like these movies? And then I tell them or something like that. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. People don't like it's with music. So many people don't like certain types of music and everything like that, So it's to each their own.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. And I wanted to go into this with an open mind, because obviously I know that for wrestling fans, I know that AEW is kind of like the girl next door, pal. Yeah. So I get that. So I wanted to go into it with an open mind. And I guess it kind of goes back to like, there's a lot of people who I think aren't necessarily ready for television. Like there's a lot of people who are like, I can like that just to me, like if I'm watching like The Office, like the equivalent of that, like I just wouldn't see them like on a show like that. I think there's a lot of people who are still green, as they would call it in wrestling. But with that said, I think probably my favorite characters that kind of came out of this, if I had to give a top three in no order, would be Adam Page, Phoenix, and I like the rapper guy. I don't know anything besides. I don't know anything about him besides like that pre-match promo. But I was like, okay, I like that because it's charisma. He's charismatic. And, I thought that was cool. So, I know we've kind of gone long, and I know I keep kind of going on, but wrestling is just one of those things, man. That it's like I really want so badly to like it because it's like with anything from your childhood, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
It's like with anything. It's like I really want to like it because this is kind of part of what made me, to an extent. But
Right.
it's just changed, and it's just not anything that I would want to watch.
That's fair, man. Again, to each their own.
Yeah, I don't know. You're gonna do
me.
No. You're gonna front me on Facebook. That's okay. It's okay, Sean.
No, I'm not gonna do that. It's not gonna happen. I personally really enjoyed the show. Again, I thought it was like it started strong, ended strong, other than the really lame explosion. But the middle was kind of a little whatever to me. I do think they could cut back some matches and kind of condense it a little more. I don't think fans would be mad if it was shorter. Sure. But that's just my opinion. But I did really like the pay-per-view. I'm sorry if I made you watch like 6 hours worth of wrestling and you hated it the whole time.
Well, no, well, because I thought that this would be a cool conversation, and to me, I mean, granted, I watched it because I work from home, so I was kind of watching it as I was working, so it wasn't like sitting in front of the TV like, what the fuck, Sean? Why'd you make me do this? It wasn't anything like that. No. It's just, I don't know, man. I think part of it too, and I know this is kind of a silly thing, a lot of like the names of people are just so vanilla.
That's fair.
like Lee Johnson. It's like, imagine being like, oh, dude, listen, you got to get $50 together. We're going to get the whole clan together. We're going to go to Madison Square Garden to see Trent. It's like, what? Trent? That's the star of the show. No, not that he is the star, but you know what I mean? Like, nobody's going to pay box office dollars to go see Trent. Doesn't even have a last name. You know what I mean? But,
fair.
So yeah, I don't want to keep cutting down, but yeah, I don't know. I just think it's kind of funny. Hopefully my perspectives are kind of funny.
No, it is funny. It's funny to me. Okay. I think it's funny.
Okay, good.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for doing this podcast. I'm glad we got to do each other's podcast. It was fun.
Yeah, man. This was awesome.
I think it was fun.
Thank you for having me on. And yeah, man, this was awesome. It was kind of cool.
You did not lose a friend.
Okay.
We're still,
I probably have listeners to your podcast like, fuck this guy, but no, that's all right.
I don't think so. I think it's whatever. Again, most people, not all people are like, to each your own. It's fine.
Yeah. Cool.
It's fine. So yeah, if you are new to the podcast, you can subscribe on YouTube or subscribe on Apple Podcasts or follow on Spotify. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button, leave a comment if you agree with Richard or you agree with me. You can see how that goes. I don't know. Yeah. We'll see. A lot of people think wrestling is stupid, so that's fine. Like, I don't mind that people think wrestling is stupid. I'm fine with it. It's all good.
if you like it, if you enjoy it, that's all that really matters at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you're not judging me for liking something you think is stupid.
No, not at all. Listen, not at all. But I do think it's silly when people watch it and knowingly don't like it. I think that's just.
I think doing anything like that is silly. I used to be kind of bad at that, but now I'm to a point like I love Marvel, so I tried to watch that Hellstrom show. I watched like 3 episodes. The first episode, I was like, "Oh, this is sick." I was like, "I like this," and then episode 2 and 3, I was like, this is stupid, and I just turned it off. I was like, I don't.
Yeah.
Same thing with dude. I watched the Flash TV show for like 6 seasons or something, and I liked it pretty much the whole time. I just think some of their seasons are too long, and they could definitely be like half the size, and it'd be fine.
Right.
But the last season, I think it was the season before the current season, I just didn't like where it was going, so I just stopped watching it. I was like,
"That's so funny you said the same exact thing happened to me with the Flash. I watched like 5 or 6 seasons, and it just got kind of silly. It's like that show Hannibal, like based on Hannibal Lecter. I watched 2 seasons. Yeah. I was like, this show is awesome. The 3rd season, I was like, this is stupid, and I stopped watching.
Dude, it's funny because I was that way with The Walking Dead. So this is the last thing before we wrap up this insanely long wrestling episode. But so I watched The Walking Dead, I think kind of as it was coming out. And I got to season 5, and I was like, this is kind of whatever. Stopped watching it. My friend who lived with us for a while, he like loves The Walking Dead, still watches it weekly. And he was kind of like, oh, dude, it got really good. So I finished watching I can't remember what show I was watching another. Oh, I think Money Heist. I finished watching Money Heist, and I was like, what's another show I can watch? So I watched the recaps for The Walking, because the company that puts on The Walking Dead, the creator of the comic book is very involved in the TV show, which is very cool. I think it's very important with those kind of things. Mm-hmm. So he has his company, they do like recap videos of the seasons. So I watched the recap 1 through 5 so I could kind of, because obviously I watched them, but it was years ago that I watched them. So I was like, okay, I want to kind of get familiar with what the fuck's going on. So then I started watching season 6, and at first I was kind of like, who the fuck are these characters again? You know, I kind of had to learn like, because they come from so many different places within the story. And I'm like, a few episodes in, I was like, okay, I got a grasp of where everyone came from. Cool. And I think I just like quit at the wrong time, because the way it was kind of weird needed to happen for it to go the way it went. Because I started episode 6. I'm now at the end of season 8, and I'm like, I love this. I can't stop watching it. I'm like, I love it. I was like, this is so cool.
Wow.
But it like got to this weird point. I guess they get to this like community, and it got weird. But that community is like the foundation of like how all of this shit makes sense. So without that part, none of the rest would make sense. So
sure.
So sometimes you got to stick stuff out, I guess. But I understand people giving up on stuff too. So it's like a weird line. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going back to it. I'm like, this is awesome. I was like, this is so sick. I love it. I'm like obsessed with it. I was like, I just want to finish it and be up to date.
Well, see, with The Walking Dead, though, you can go back and binge it. Some people are like, with wrestling, like, it hasn't been good in 11 years, and I watch every Monday. It's like, why? If you haven't liked it for 11 years, what are you doing?
But, like, a lot of my friends and myself included watched WWE for a long time, not liking it. And I got to a point where I was like, this is stupid. Why do I watch this? Yeah. I think it was the AEW that really like sparked it. Like, honestly, because I was like, I have something different to watch. I'm still watching wrestling, and I enjoy it like 80 to 90% of the time. So I was like, if I'm watching and enjoying it, that's important to me. Because I think if I didn't enjoy it, I just wouldn't watch it. Like, I wouldn't be excited to watch it, but I do. So.
And as long as you like it, man, I mean, that's kind of like the moral for anything. I mean, as long as you like it, that's all that really matters. I mean, people can say, oh, that's stupid. But it's like, hey, man, listen, you don't like it. That's cool. I like it. I'm going to watch it. You know what I mean? It's like with anything.
True.
Yeah.
True that. Well, awesome. That's the moral of the story, guys. Wrestling is the key to everything.
That's
right.
Yeah. Pal. Yeah. I
like your impressions. I like it.
Yeah. Pal. Yeah. Metalcore. Oh yeah, I like that. Yeah,
awesome, man. Thank you guys so much. Thank you again, Richard, for joining. Check out his band, his podcast. Just check out their YouTube channel because everything's there, pretty much.
That's right.
Everything's there. Go there. You'll see me there tomorrow. So if you want to hear Morris talking for a very long time about random things, also listen to that.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me again, man. This was a lot of fun.
No problem, guys. Until next time, this is Metalcore Nerds.